Chapter 99. The waiter of heavens beyond quickly served a pot of tea and teacups. The door of the private room opened and closed. Meng Qi and the others sat around the table. No one touched their chopsticks, and they were all listening attentively to her description of what happened in Starfall Valley that day. Starfall Sea? Chu Tianfeng almost jumped up. You're in the Starfall Sea now? Yes. Meng Qi was also helpless. The Starfall Sea was an absolutely dangerous place in the 3,000 worlds. Legend had it that anyone below the spirit severing stage would die as soon as they stepped into it. If it weren't for Yun Qingyan, Meng Qi would probably have died under the claws of the Nirvana Fierce Eagle. Meng Qi, Qin Xiuma, calm down. Where are you in the Starfall Sea? I should be in the center. Central. Even Su Junmo sucked in a cold breath. If it was at the edge, they could still find a way to break in and bring Meng Qi out. Wait, isn't the entrance to the Starfall Sea in the east closed? Su Junmo asked. When Pei Mufeng went in, he brought you with him into the Starfall Sea. What about him? No. Meng Qi shook her head and told everyone what happened in the Star Lake. So you're saying... Xikong Xing was stunned. The Star Lake in Starfall Valley is connected to the Starfall Sea? Yes. Meng Qi nodded. That day, when we were about to flip over Starfall Valley, the Star Lake looked fine. She said, I didn't expect that something like this would happen. Su Junmo looked at Meng Qi thoughtfully. Pavilion Master Pei also went to the Starfall Sea. Did you meet him? No. Meng Qi shook her head. She thought for a moment and didn't mention Yun Qingyan. Ji Wujiong was with me at the Star Lake. Did you see him? No. Su Junmo shook his head firmly. He took a deep look at Meng Qi and said, After you disappeared, the Falling Star Pavilion's disciples and we looked for you nearby. We didn't see Ji Wujiong. Strange, they can't see any changes in the Star Lake. It said that only 3 disciples can use the Star Lake for a day each year. The disciples of the Falling Star Pavilion are not familiar with that place. Chu Tianfeng continued. Meng Qi, how can you come to this sky beyond heaven? Is it safe for you? It is said that the Starfall Sea is filled with miasma and ferocious beasts. You can kill one with every step you take. Are you sure you can do this? He looked at Meng Qi up and down anxiously and asked, The ferocious beasts in the Starfall Sea are much stronger than those in the outside world. You must not fight them head-on if you encounter them. Thank you for your concern. Meng Qi nodded at Chu Tianfeng. I'm in a relatively safe place right now. There are no exotic beasts for the time being. Is there a way to leave? Qin Xiuma asked. This was what Meng Qi was worried about. The center of the Starfall Sea is not as dangerous and terrifying as the legends say. She said, It's just that if I want to leave there, I can only walk from the center to the edge. Isn't that very dangerous? Xikong Xing asked. Yes. Meng Qi said straightforwardly. I think it will be very difficult for me to leave by myself. Starfall Sea. Xue Jinwen, who had been silent all this time, thought for a while. I once saw some records in the library at home. It is said that the place is also simply divided into the East, West, South, and North realms. As she spoke, she asked the waiter of the sky beyond Heaven Tower to bring her the 4 treasures of the study. After watching the door of the private room close again, Xue Jinwen spread the white paper on the table and picked up the brush to draw. It is said that the center of the Starfall Sea is a huge lake. As she spoke, she drew a circle in the middle to represent the lake. Then, she divided the lake into 4 parts along the circle. Xue Jinwen was born in the Wind League. Although she was the unfavored daughter of the Xue family, she had been in the Wind League for a long time. However, the Wind Alliance had existed for tens of thousands of years. Even Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xiuma, who were also disciples of large sects, had never heard of some of the secrets she knew. Several ancestors of my family have entered the Starfall Sea personally or sent people to do so. Xue Jinwen said, They all entered from the west. This place, she drew the shape of a wave on the west side. It is an endless forest and miasma. There are countless poisonous insects and beasts hibernating in it. Because my ancestors were medical cultivators, they were lucky enough to pass through the forest. However, it is difficult to go further. Most of my ancestors stopped at the edge of the forest. The contents of the books at home are mostly about the murderers and miasma in the forest. Meng Qi listened attentively. The west side is forest and miasma. Shui Jinwen continued. According to the books, the west side of the Starfall Sea is a relatively less dangerous place. So if I want to come out, it's best to choose the west side? Meng Qi asked. 8 ancestors of my family died in the Starfall Sea. Shui Jinwen looked up at Meng Qi and said quietly, Meng Qi, someone from the Burning Sky Palace has also been to the Starfall Sea. Chu Tianfeng continued. They also entered the Starfall Sea from the west side. As far as I know, 12 elders at the spirit severing stage or above died there. 2 KXS. Lassie spoke. He took the pen from Shui Jinwen's hand and told Meng Qi the secrets of his sect without hesitation. In the forest on the west side of the Starfall Sea, besides the poisonous insects and miasma, there are also powerful strange beasts. According to the descriptions of the ancestors who came out alive, those strange beasts are at least at the spirit severing stage 5 or 6. Meng Qi. Cloud Peak entered the Starfall Sea from the south. Qin Xioma continued. Cloud Peak was the sect he belonged to. There are many swamps in the south side of the Starfall Sea. It's a bit like the swamps in the south, but it's more dangerous. There are countless poisonous insects, and there are also fierce beasts that can survive in the swamps and on land. I don't know how many people went to the sect, but there are records that more than 20 cultivators died there. Meng Qi. I know a little about the situation on the east side of the Starfall Sea. Meng Qi also told him what he knew without hesitation. Her understanding of the east side of the Starfall Sea was almost all what she heard from Pei Mufeng in her previous life. There was a great battle between demonic cultivators and cultivators on the east side of the Starfall Sea. The killing intent hasn't dissipated yet, so it's probably equivalent to a large formation. One step in the formation, one kill, one danger at every step. The fierce beasts that can survive in such a place are all cunning and intelligent. Some of them even gather together and ambush others. In the past, Pei Mufeng had been injured by such cunning, fierce beasts. If he hadn't coincidentally encountered Meng Qi and been picked up by her, he would have been killed. He would have quickly become food in the stomach of the fierce beasts that had been following him and wanted to kill him after he was heavily wounded. Meng Qi thought for a moment, then took the pen and drew a big cross on the east side. A genius sword show like Pei Mufeng had almost died on the east side. She definitely wouldn't risk going there. The swamps in the south are also good for ambushes. Meng Qi drew a cross on the south side. Does anyone know the situation on the north side? Everyone in the room shook their heads. Meng Qi was slightly hesitant. So many elders and experts of the Wind Alliance had died on the west side. If she went, she would probably be even worse off. Meng Qi. Xikong Xing comforted her. The Starfall Sea is connected to the 3 realms. We can think of other ways. Meng Qi heard this and turned to look at Su Junmo with Xikong Xing. This person was really experienced and knowledgeable in the demon realm. He even knew the secrets of the demon realm's big shots. He must be familiar with the Starfall Sea. Why are you looking at me? Su Junmo said, I haven't been there either. Xikong Xing. You should have heard of one of the most vicious curses in the demon realm. It's a curse that sky demons fall into the Starfall Sea. When he said this, he couldn't help but mutter. There was news in the demon realm that the demon lord had died in the Starfall Sea. His body and soul were gone. Really, just thinking about it made him angry. Then, Meng Qi was a little depressed. She put her chin on the table and looked at the people around her. The demon realm? Don't! Su Junmo quickly waved his hand. The demon realm is even more terrifying than the Starfall Sea. The people in the private room looked at each other. There were too many legends about the Starfall Sea in the Trichiliacosm. Basically, those below the spirit severing stage would die as soon as they stepped in. They were considered the best of the younger generation, but they were still at a loss when it came to the Starfall Sea. Most importantly, with their current abilities, they didn't even know where Meng Qi was in the Starfall Sea. Even if they knew and joined forces to break in, the final result was that not only would they not be able to save Meng Qi, but they would also be wiped out. There's no other way. Meng Qi stood up. I have to go to the Heaven and Earth Book House. Heaven and Earth Book House? Shui Jinwen suddenly remembered that Meng Qi had mentioned it before. It was a place where they could use spiritual points to borrow books. I'll go with you. She quickly stood up as well. We'll go too, Chu Tianfeng immediately said. No. Su Junmo shook his head. You can't go. Why? Shui Jinwen looked at him curiously. From his tone, Su Junmo seemed to know about the Heaven and Earth Book House. Did he also know that one had to use 10 spiritual points to borrow a book there? Those were spiritual points, not spirit stones. There's no danger there. Meng Qi can go by himself. Su Junmo paused, glanced at the others, and continued. What we need to do now is to collect as much information about the Starfall Sea as possible. In short, no matter what method we use, the faster, the better. Shui Jinwen glanced at Su Junmo's face. She raised her eyebrows slightly. Although she was still very curious, she didn't insist on accompanying Meng Qi to the Heaven and Earth Book House. Meng Qi. Su Junmo looked at Meng Qi. Can you guarantee that the place you are at is safe? As soon as he said this, everyone looked at Meng Qi again. They had never heard that there was a safe place in the Starfall Sea. Now, either Meng Qi had made a mistake and she wasn't in the Starfall Sea, or there was indeed such a place in the center of the Starfall Sea. Otherwise, with her cultivation level, she would have been torn to pieces by the murderers inside long ago. Yes, Meng Qi nodded and said firmly. In fact, she didn't know if the great desolate island was safe or not. However, with Yun Qingyan by her side, no matter how dangerous the place was, it seemed to be safe for her. Okay. Su Junmo nodded slightly. We'll meet here again after 24 hours. Meng Qi, can you do that? Yes. Meng Qi nodded without hesitation. You can go to the Heaven and Earth Book House. We'll leave first. By the way, Su Junmo took out his nameplate. Let's exchange the information on the nameplates so that it's easier to contact each other. Okay. Meng Qi quickly took out her nameplate and exchanged it with the others. This way, she could contact them just like she did with Shui Jinwen. As long as they were in the heavens beyond heaven, it would be very convenient for them to contact each other. I'll leave first. Meng Qi turned and walked out of the door. Wait. Shui Jinwen chased after her and stopped her. Meng Qi, do you have enough spirit points? She didn't know how many books she needed to borrow and how many spirit points she needed to go to the Heaven and Earth Book House to check out the books related to the Starfall Sea. Although Meng Qi had said before that she had a lot of spirit points, it was still not enough. Shui Jinwen was still a little worried. Before Meng Qi could answer, Chu Tianfeng spoke first. Damn! Spirit points? Does it cost spirit points to borrow books from the Heaven and Earth Book House? Yes. Shui Jinwen looked at him, then looked at Su Junmo and said, 10 spirit points can be used to borrow a book. 10. Even though Chu Tianfeng was from a large sect, he was shocked when he heard this number. I heard that spirit points are very hard to come by. The elders in our sect mentioned that if we want to open a shop here, we need to use spirit points. Chu Tianfeng didn't say something. Opening a shop for a month would only cost a few dozen spirit points. Let me see. Meng Qi glanced at him and held the nameplate to check her remaining spirit points. I still have... It seems to have increased again. Now it's 123,000 spirit points. Shui Jinwen, Chu Tianfeng, Qin Shima, even Su Junmo, he looked up at the roof. She must be scared. It should be enough. Meng Qi put away the nameplate. I'll go first. Thank you for your hard work. She saluted everyone, turned around, opened the door, and walked out. More than 20,000 spirit points. The door closed again. Chu Tianfeng still hadn't recovered from the shock. Is she the cultivator with the most spirit points in the entire sky beyond heaven? And she's only a golden core cultivator. If this gets out, those sect elders will die of jealousy, right? You might as well count all the spirit points that those sects have. Meng Qi can definitely be ranked in the top 10. Su Junmo wanted to roll his eyes again. As far as I know, it's only 800 spirit points to exchange for an opportunity to explore the blessed enclave in the surrounding mountains. Chu Tianfeng didn't say anything. He looked at the silent Qin Xiaomo thoughtfully. The two looked at each other and quickly skipped the topic. Are we going to collect information about the fallen star sea now? Yes. Su Junmo didn't want to talk about this issue. Let's split up. We'll meet here at this time tomorrow. Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xiaomo quickly left. Even Sikong Xing left. She said that she wanted to find a way to contact her father and see if her rich father knew about the fallen star sea. Only Xue Jinwen walked to Su Junmo after they all left. What's the matter? Su Junmo looked at her. Did you guide Ming Qi to the Heaven and Earth Book House? She smiled and asked softly. Yes. Su Junmo nodded. Xue Jinwen reached out and touched a few strands of hair on her temples. I've been in Sky Beyond Heaven for several years, but I've never heard of the Heaven and Earth Book House. Ming Qi mentioned it and said that she needed spirit points to borrow the books inside. I thought she met a swindler. What are you trying to say? Su Junmo stared at her for a while and asked slowly. I'm just a little worried about her, Xue Jinwen said. If I knew it was you who asked her to go, I wouldn't be so worried. Let's go, she said again. I hope Ming Qi can come back safely from the Fallen Star Sea. Where are you going? Su Junmo didn't move. Instead, he asked. The Xue family. Xue Jinwen said, I'm going to find my elder brother. But haven't you left the Xue family? Su Junmo frowned. You can wait for us in Rosy Lane. Su Junmo, you should have heard about the barrier of the Xinglin Holy Land Tournament. Xue Jinwen didn't beat around the bush. I've always been curious about why you were willing to befriend the Wind Alliance and the Xue family. After all, as the envoy of the Demon Realm and the future leader of the Sky Demon Arctic Fox clan, the major sects of the Four Realms would be happy to befriend you. Medical cultivators have long lost their ancient glory in the 3,000 worlds. Sword cultivators and magic cultivators are the strongest in the world. Xue Jinwen's eyes moved. Why do you value the Wind Alliance so much? Xue Jinwen seemed to be asking a question, but it also seemed like she was talking to herself. Without waiting for Su Junmo to answer, she continued, Later, I accidentally found out that you seem to be quite interested in the Xinglin Holy Land. You should also know that the Wind Alliance can open the barrier of the tournament for the second time in 10 years. For thousands of years, the 12 medical cultivator sects of the Four Realms can enter the barrier of the tournament 3 times every 10 years. Everyone knows why we're going in, but everyone has a tacit understanding and won't say anything. Xue Jinwen ran her fingers through her hair again. 2,000 years ago, the 3,000 worlds suffered another catastrophe. The 2 major medical cultivator sects in the south and east. You should have heard of them. They were once powerful sects that could be compared to the Xue family, but they were tragically wiped out. Su Junmo's expression changed slightly. Of course, he knew about this matter. It spread throughout the 3 realms, and the Demon Realm's cruel and murderous reputation shocked the entire 3 realms. After that incident, the relationship between the Demon Realm and the 3,000 worlds was further eased. The reason why he could come and go freely in the 3,000 worlds and be treated as a guest of honor by many sects was also because of this matter. I know, Su Junmo said in a deep voice. The 2 major sects had thousands of people. One of the sects even had a Dongjin cultivator, but no one survived. The people were in a terrible situation, and their inheritance was cut off. The 3,000 worlds were furious. And when the news reached the ears of the ancestors of the family, they felt even more sad for the death of their own kind. Medical cultivators, Xue Jinwen sighed softly. They can be considered to have saved the dying and healed the injured. Countless people survived, but they were so weak that they couldn't protect themselves at all. Su Junmo did not say anything. However, according to the records in the family's library, it was not like this in the ancient times tens of thousands of years ago. Medical cultivators were once on par with sword cultivators and dharma cultivators. Not only could they save people, but they could also hurt people. At least, they could protect themselves, and they would not be reduced to ghosts under the butcher's knife and be at the mercy of others, Xue Jinwen said. Therefore, since then, the Medical Cultivators Dharma Assembly Alliance was born. All the medical cultivators in the world, regardless of whether they belonged to the 12. No. At that time, only the top 10 medical cultivator sects were left. Su Junmo's expression changed slightly, and his gaze became sharper than before. You guessed it, Shui Jinwen was attentive to begin with. She saw the change in Su Junmo's expression and smiled indifferently. It doesn't matter if you're from a small sect or an itinerant cultivator. As long as you're a medical cultivator and are outstanding enough, you can get a chance to enter the Apricot Forest Competition's barrier once every 10 years. The 12 medical cultivator sects spent thousands of years, but they could not decipher the secret of the Apricot Forest Competition's barrier. They could not pass the test. That tragic extermination scared them, and they couldn't wait any longer. Although everyone was reluctant to give up such an opportunity, the Apricot Forest sacred ground was passed down from ancient times. It is said that it contains the last will of an ancient medical cultivator. As long as you pass the test, you can become his successor. Not only can you inherit his medical skills, but you can also learn the powerful attack methods of the ancient medical cultivators. However, so much time has passed, and the 12 medical cultivator sects can be considered to have produced many capable people. Every 10 years, a new genius will appear. Shui Jinwen said slowly, this Apricot Forest Competition's barrier, but no one has ever passed the test. Sword cultivators and Dharma cultivators are getting stronger and stronger. The stronger they are, the more dangerous places they can explore. Some of the originally extinct legacies are gradually reappearing in the world. The weapon cultivators have also suddenly obtained ancient legacies and are gradually revitalizing. Shui Jinwen looked at Su Junmo and raised her eyebrows. The demon realm has always produced many capable people, and there are many powerhouses. The current demon lord is said to be a rare genius in the Sky Demon White Tiger clan. As for the demon realm, she sighed softly. They have always been restless, coveting the vast world of the Trichiliocosm and the rich resources. They're always looking for opportunities to invade. Even my father is starting to become anxious. They are even discussing that they will only keep one chance for the current top 10 medical cultivator sects and give up the other 2 chances. After all, the weapon cultivators are rising again, making everyone feel that as long as they can pass the barrier test and obtain the legacy of that powerful senior, then the medical cultivators can be revitalized like the weapon cultivators. Shui Jinwen's voice was gentle and pleasant as she told these secrets. Although it was a secret, there were actually many people who knew about it. Even if 2 of the 12 medical cultivator sects in the 4 realms had been completely destroyed, there were still many families like the Shui family that had been passed down for 10,000 years. There were many disciples who knew about the history of medical cultivators. Shui Jinwen reached out and tucked the strand of hair on her cheek behind her ear. Meng Qi passed the barrier test in front of almost all the medical cultivators in the 4 realms, as well as the medical cultivator sections. Even though she rejected Senior Lin Yan in the end, she was recognized and became her friend. She looked at Su Junmo and said softly, I guess father will think of a way to let big brother marry Meng Qi. What? Su Junmo did not expect this at all and blurted out, my big brother Shui Chengxian. Shui Jinwen looked at the shock on his face, and a trace of sadness flashed in her eyes. But she quickly pulled herself together and continued, I'm not boasting, but he is indeed a rare genius among the younger generation of medical cultivators. He is the future head of the Shui family, and may even be the future head of the Wind Alliance. He is handsome and gentle, and is also the most suitable Dao companion in the hearts of many female cultivators. So now that Meng Qi is like this, maybe we can ask the Wind Alliance for help. Shui Jinwen said, my big brother even gave his blood moon to her. Even without father, I think he won't stand by and do nothing. Shui Jinwen paused and said, if Meng Qi did not fall into the Starfall Sea, I would not have mentioned this. But now, with just a few of us, I'm afraid. She did not finish speaking, but Su Junmo also understood what she meant. He actually had a very strong force in his hands that he could mobilize. It was the secret guards personally trained by his lord. Although his lord seemed to dote on her a little to mobilize them to save Meng Qi, a golden core cultivator, Su Junmo did not dare to make a decision on his own. What should he do? Even for him, it was rare for him to hesitate. Shui Jinwen definitely did not say so much just to let the Shui family take action. She was saying Su Junmo was smart and quickly reacted. Shui Jinwen probably thought that he was interested in Meng Qi, so she used her big brother to tell him. Shui Qingxian was not only the eldest son of the Shui family, but he also cultivated the way of medicine with Meng Qi. They were like-minded and could be considered a good match. Su Junmo was a little speechless. He really did not have that kind of thought about Meng Qi. Moreover, Shui Qingxian could not be a match for his lord. Fellow Taoist Su, Shui Jinwen said, the Wind Alliance is the first medical cultivation sect in the Western land. That day, everyone saw with their own eyes that Senior Lin Yin gave Meng Qi a gift. They will not leave her to die. Okay. Su Junmo instantly made up his mind. The Starfall Sea was a dangerous place for heavenly demons like them. Although Meng Qi said that she was safe now, what would happen next? The more she stayed there, the more danger she would be in. Then, Shui Jinwen said, after leaving heaven beyond heaven, can fellow Taoist Su come with me to find my big brother? Okay. Once Su Junmo made a decision, he did not hesitate anymore. However, he also had to find a way to report this matter to his lord. There was no response from the communication jade slip. In this kind of matter, Su Junmo did not dare to make a decision without permission. Let's go. He made up his mind and took the initiative to open the door of the private room. The two of them left heaven beyond heaven one after the other and walked toward the teleportation formation. At this time, Meng Qi was already standing at the bottom of the Heaven and Earth Bookhouse. Senior. She looked up at the quiet Heaven and Earth Bookhouse. The stairs spiraled up as if there was no end in sight. Are you there? Meng Qi retracted her gaze and looked around. The bookhouse was still quiet. There was no one else except her. Meng Qi waited for a moment and stepped forward. None of the bookshelves here were labeled with the contents of the jade slips and bamboo slips on the bookshelves. There were countless such bookshelves on each floor, and there were countless bamboo slips and jade slips on them. Meng Qi had no doubt that if she searched one by one, she probably would not find what she needed even if she spent all her spiritual points. Senior. Meng Qi called out again. However, she still did not get a response. She could only pick up a jade slip on the bookshelf next to her and input some spiritual energy. What was recorded was the life story of a demon city lord in the demon realm. The demon city lord lived thousands of years ago and was a name that Meng Qi had never heard of. Sigh. She sighed softly and put the jade slip back on the bookshelf. Searching one by one like this was similar to looking for a needle in a haystack. It was definitely not a solution. Forget it for today. She hesitated for a moment, turned around, and walked out of the Heaven and Earth Bookhouse in disappointment. Before leaving Heaven beyond Heaven City, Meng Qi subconsciously looked up at the highest floating island again. Then, she stepped into the teleportation formation. Starfall Sea, Great Desolate Island. Meng Qi slowly opened her eyes. The jade slip in Heaven beyond Heaven in her hand was a little warm from her grip. Although she did not find what she needed, it was a pleasant surprise to see a few good friends in Heaven beyond Heaven. Meng Qi rested her chin on one hand and looked at the furnishings in the room. She did not know how long Qing Yanzhenjun planned to stay here. Also, why was he also in Starfall Sea? She was really curious. Meng Qi remembered that when she first met Yun Qingyan in her previous life, she also descended from the sky like this. At that time, she was looking for a spiritual herb on a mountain. There were many poisonous snakes on the mountain, and the spiritual herb was a treasure that they guarded. Although Meng Qi brought a lot of snake repellent powder, when she finally picked the spiritual herb, she was still surrounded by angry poisonous snakes. At that time, she was only in the 5th stage of the Foundation Establishment stage and was extremely weak. After barely killing dozens of poisonous snakes, a snake took advantage of the situation and fiercely bit her arm. It was at that time that Yun Qingyan descended from the sky like a god. He only waved his sleeve, and those snakes surged crazily like boiling water. In just a moment, they all died in front of Meng Qi. Meng Qi still remembered the first sentence he said to her was, "You're just a little Foundation Establishment cultivator. What are you doing here? Do you want to die?" Of course she wanted to die. At that time, she picked the spiritual herb to save a man in the city who had a strange disease. Yun Qingyan sent her all the way back to the city at the foot of the mountain. He seemed to be quite interested in watching Meng Qi refine medicine and then treat the patient. 3 days later, the man could finally get out of bed. Yun Qingyan also said to her, "Come with me. I'll teach you how to save your own life before saving others." Meng Qi followed him. It was as if everything was so natural. She never asked who he was or where he came from. Meng Qi also never doubted whether the man who saved her life had any ulterior motives. At that time, she was poor and was just a little foundation establishment cultivator. The only medical skills she had were probably not worth mentioning in the other party's eyes. The two of them naturally traveled together like this. Now that she thought about it, Meng Qi felt a little amused. Yun Qingyan never even mentioned his name to her, nor did he say that he wanted to take her as his disciple. In the beginning, he didn't teach her everything. Yun Qingyan didn't even interfere with Meng Qi's life. He said that he wanted Meng Qi to go with him, but it was more like he followed Meng Qi. Meng Qi wanted to cultivate medical skills. She didn't just practice those medical skills. They passed by the cities and sects along the way. She treated people almost everywhere she went. Occasionally, she would pick up some injured cultivators along the way. As long as they were still breathing, Meng Qi would find a way to save them. At the beginning, Yun Qingyan just watched curiously and occasionally protected her. At the beginning, Meng Qi was very confused. She didn't know what the other was thinking. Then slowly, Yun Qingyan started to teach her formations. He disliked that the fire Meng Qi used to make medicine was too weak and changed the greatly fire formation for her to use. The formations he casually carved on the medicine cauldron could make medicine make it faster and the Dan pills purer. When Meng Qi had some whimsical and naive ideas, he would excitedly practice them with her and help her think of solutions. Occasionally, he would find her cultivation progress slow and teach her the great star formation. He felt that medical cultivators were too weak at protecting themselves and taught her how to forge silver medicine knives. Later, he even taught her the Great Four formation. The two of them were neither friends nor disciples, but she followed Yun Qingyan for many years. Meng Qi propped her chin on her hand, her gaze following the night pearl in front of her. Remembering the events of her previous life, she felt her heart warm. It seemed that it was the same in her previous life. From the first time they met, Yun Qingyan didn't like to explain himself, and his actions were a little unexpected. If it were someone else, they might think that he was a little strange. But she was willing to believe him. Meng Qi narrowed her eyes slightly and looked around. Actually, if she wasn't afraid that her friends wouldn't find her, she would be worried. The Fallen Star Sea was the Fallen Star Sea. To be able to stay here with Yun Qingyan, even if she went to the Great Devil Sky, she would probably think that it was a paradise, let alone the Fallen Star Sea. Meng Qi stretched and was about to lie down to rest when she suddenly realized little Qi hadn't been released yet. No wonder she felt that something was missing just now. Meng Qi hurriedly took out the beast house from her storage bag. She suddenly jumped up. The beast house was empty. The little white tiger, which had always been lying lazily inside and resting on the bamboo bed in the beast house most of the time, every day, was gone. Little Qi. Meng Qi was a little flustered. She knew that little Qi definitely couldn't have run into her storage bag from the beast house, but she still quickly checked her storage bag. Still nothing. Meng Qi raised the beast house, but the beast house was simple and could be seen at a glance. No matter how young little Qi was, it was still a sky demon white tiger. It couldn't have hidden in the beast house without her noticing. She instantly became even more flustered. Could it be that when she was swept into this place? No. Meng Qi opened her eyes in the Fallen Star Sea and checked her storage bag immediately. Little Qi was definitely still there at that time. She suddenly jumped off the bed and quickly ran out of the door without even putting on her shoes properly. Qing Yanzhen Jun. Meng Qi didn't care if she would disturb the other party. Whenever she thought about where little Qi had landed in the Fallen Star Sea, her heart would be in a mess. It was still so young, and it had suffered such serious injuries. If it encountered a ferocious bird like the Nirvana fierce eagle, it would definitely. Meng-Chi suddenly shook her head and didn't dare to continue thinking. She quickly rushed to Yin Qingyin's room and knocked on the door. "Qing Yanzhenjun, are you asleep?" Meng-Chi took a deep breath and quickly said, I have something to ask of you." She paused and quickly said, "I have a spirit beast. When I fell into the fallen star sea, it was still in my storage bag. But now, there's no trace of it in the beast house." "Qing Yanzhenjun?" Meng-Chi knocked on the door again. The room was silent. Yun Qingyin didn't seem to have made a sound from beginning to end. She instantly became even more worried. "Qing Yanzhenjun, are you okay?" She knew that as powerful as he was, nothing could happen to him. However, Yun Qingyin clearly said that he was just opposite and that Meng-Chi could come to him if she needed anything. But now, there was no movement. Meng-Chi knocked on the door again. "Qing Yanzhenjun, are you in there?" She became more and more uneasy. She waited for a while, but the room was still silent. Meng-Chi gritted her teeth, turned her wrist, and took out a silver medicine knife. She held the silver medicine knife in her right hand, held her breath, and reached out to push the door open. The door wasn't locked, so Meng-Chi opened it with a push. Yun Qingyin's room looked similar to hers. She carefully stepped into the room. "Qing Yanzhenjun?" Meng-Chi called out softly again. There was no one in the room. Meng-Chi quickly looked around. Only in the innermost room, heavy gauze hung down, covering the large carved bed. Vaguely, there seemed to be a black shadow inside. Meng-Chi took a deep breath, held the medicine knife tighter, and walked toward the bed. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. The room was still quiet, and only her soft footsteps could be heard. Meng-Chi walked to the bed and held the medicine knife tightly. "Qing Yanzhenjun, sorry to offend you." Then, she reached out and lifted the heavy gauze. Chapter 100. Under the soft light of the night luminescent pearl, on a large carved bed covered by a veil. The bed was covered with a soft blanket, and a white tiger was lying lazily on it. The white tiger's eyes were closed, and its soft and smooth white fur emitted a soft glow under the night luminescent pearl. Except for several black cloud patterns on its forehead and back, its entire body was white. Its 2 front paws were crossed in front of its body, and its chin was resting on them. Its semicircular ears drooped slightly, and its furry claws were retracted into sharp claws. It looked quite harmless. Its abdomen, which was also covered with a thick layer of soft fur, was slowly rising and falling with its breathing. Is it asleep?" She suddenly came back to her senses. Meng-Chi. Meng-Chi. She loosened her grip, and the cool veil slipped from her hand, gently brushing against her cheek. It covered the large bed again, and also covered the huge white tiger that seemed to be in a deep sleep. Meng-Chi was in a daze and suddenly staggered back a few steps. She reached out and rubbed her eyes. Just now, did she see wrongly? Yes, she must have seen wrongly. She suddenly fell into the starfall sea, was frightened, and then little Chi went missing. She was too panicked, too worried about little Chi. 1200 KSW, net Meng-Chi subconsciously swallowed. Faintly, a somewhat scary thought flashed through her mind. The thought flashed through her mind so quickly that she couldn't catch it, and she didn't dare to catch it. Yes, that must be it. She must have seen wrongly, right? Meng-Chi slowly took a deep breath, trying to calm herself down. The light of the night luminescent pearl shone on the veil, and she could still see the black shadow inside. Is he okay? After the initial shock, Meng-Chi suddenly came back to her senses. If he was just asleep, he wouldn't have woken up when she knocked on the door, entered the room, and walked to the bed to lift the veil. She suddenly stepped forward and raised her hand. When her fingertips touched the veil, Meng-Chi hesitated for a moment and then decisively lifted the veil again. On the bed, the white tiger that was even taller and more slender than her was still lying there quietly. Meng-Chi pursed his dry lips. Are you okay?" she asked softly. The white tiger remained motionless. Even its ears did not react. "You." Meng-Chi looked at the huge creature in front of him, that clearly looked like an adult white tiger. He carefully reached out his hand and gently pressed it on the other party's forehead. Her fingertips glowed slightly, and the fluorescent light illuminated the white tiger's fur even more clearly. Meng Qi exerted a little force with his fingers and pressed on the thick white fur that looked neat and soft. It felt so good. It turned out that the big white tiger was also very easy to touch. Meng Qi suddenly came back to his senses and closed his eyes. Ugh! Just as her spiritual energy entered, it was as if it had sunk into an unfathomable abyss. Not only could she not feel anything, even the spiritual energy she sent and was instantly sucked away. Meng Qi took a deep breath and sent in a wisp of spiritual energy again. Similarly, as soon as the spiritual energy touched it, it was instantly sucked dry. She was stunned and opened her eyes to look at the white tiger. It was as if there was a bottomless abyss in the other party's body that could even devour spiritual energy. What was going on? Meng Qi was a little hesitant. The white tiger was still lying quietly on the bed. Even if she tossed and turned, it still did not wake up. Meng Qi stared at it for a while. At first glance, she felt that this white tiger was too big and too fierce. It was far less cute than the little white tiger, Little Qi. But after staring for a while, the other party's eyes were still closed. Its chin was obediently resting on its furry paws, and its two white, fluffy semicircular ears were slightly drooping. It seemed a little cute. Meng Qi thought for a while and took out a silver needle from her storage bag. This was the silver needle that she bought from the Cloud Immortal Pavilion. It was commonly used by medical cultivators for diagnosis. Of course, it was not as useful as Xue Qingxuan's natal magic treasure, but it was not bad for her now. She reached out and gently held the white tiger's paw. She held the other party's slightly cold paw in her palm, and then pinched the silver needle and pierced it. The tip of the needle flashed with a cold light. As soon as it touched the white tiger's paw, the white tiger, who had not moved for a long time, suddenly opened its eyes. There seemed to be stars flashing in its blue eyes, but they quickly disappeared into its cold eyes that were as deep as the night sky. Meng Qi did not have time to react at all. The paw that she carefully held in her palm suddenly turned over. She only felt a strong force on her shoulder. As the world spun, her back hit the soft quilt heavily. Meng Qi's chest sank. The white tiger's paw was already pressing her down on the bed. Meng Qi, she could not speak at all. The paw that was stepping on her exerted a little force, and all her unfinished words were blocked. Meng Qi subconsciously widened her eyes and looked up. She was instantly pressed down and could not breathe. The white tiger looked down at her condescendingly. Its eyes were cold, as if they were empty. There was not a trace of emotion that belonged to a living creature in them. But soon, the indifference was dispelled, and the pair of blue eyes gradually focused. Meng Qi only felt the paw stepping on her chest slowly weaken, and fresh air poured into her nose again. I cough, 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 cough. She coughed a few more times and struggled to speak. I just cough, cough, cough. She was lying in the soft brocade quilt. Although the white tiger had relaxed its grip on her, it still pressed her down on the bed. It was as if it was warning Meng Qi that if she dared to struggle, it could take her life at any time. She stared unblinkingly at the white tiger on top of her, looking at the other party's eyes that were getting colder and colder. The soft white fur was in front of her eyes. When Meng Qi's breath brushed past, it could also make the white fur sway gently. She looked down at the paw pressing on her body. The semicircular paw was an enlarged version of Little Qi's paw. Meng Qi looked up at the white tiger in front of her. When Little Qi became an adult, it should also look like this, right? In an instant, countless thoughts surged into Meng Qi's mind like a tidal wave. Chu Tianfeng had shown her before. In the mirror image recorded in the spell, the one called True Lord White Tiger had the same magnificent beauty as her master. The demon cultivators of the Red Fox clan were inexplicably horrified when they saw the Four Extremes formation. Even Xikong Xing was so scared that he lost his fighting spirit and obediently bowed down to her to address her as Lord. The study of spell formations had long been lost in the 3,000 worlds. It was said that there were relatively complete inheritances in the demon realm and the devil realm that were passed down from the ancient times tens of thousands of years ago. And this valiant, strong, and beautiful heavenly demon white tiger in front of her. This was definitely not the white tiger spirit beast of the 3,000 worlds. They were not that strong, and they would not have eyes that were far more beautiful and bright than the purest sapphires in the world. Qing Yanzhenjun? Meng Qi murmured and called out softly. The white tiger seemed to be stunned, and a complicated light flashed in his blue eyes. He slowly raised his paw. However, the moment he moved his paw, Meng Qi suddenly reached out and hugged his furry front paw tightly. Qing Yanzhenjun, she called out again, but this time, there was no hesitation or doubt in her voice. Instead, it became firm. The white tiger. It's really... Meng Qi buried her head in the thick white fur on his chest and hugged his paw tightly. Sob, is it really Qing Yanzhenjun? She choked with sobs. For some reason, she suddenly felt like crying. Her nose was sour, and her eyes were hot. She couldn't control her tears at all, and they fell down. Meng Qi's tears wet the white fur on the white tiger's chest. As if he was scalded, he quickly shrank back. Why is she crying again? Wasn't she fine just now? Why is she crying again? Sob, 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 sob. Meng Qi hugged the white tiger's furry paw and couldn't control her tears at all. She didn't think much of it before. Even if the other party descended from the sky and appeared in the starfall sea to save her. However, probably because she had been with the illusion array for a month in the barrier of the grand competition, Meng Qi always felt that it was unreal. Following him all the way to the vast wilderness, she also felt that every step was like stepping on clouds. She was floating and couldn't step on solid ground. She obediently followed him here. The reason why she felt conflicted about whether to leave or stay was mostly because she still felt that it was unreal. That feeling was as if she had stepped into another illusion array. Meng Qi had even been secretly looking for new flaws that could allow her to see through this illusion array. Then, she realized that all of this was an illusion. Even if she went to the heavens beyond heaven and met her good friends, everyone would help her find a way to leave the Starfall Sea. There was still a voice in her heart that kept saying, it's fake. It's all fake. You'll soon discover the truth, see through the illusion array, and wake up. Then, when she woke up from her dream, she would still be alone, and Yun Qingyan would still be on the horizon that she couldn't reach. But now, Meng Qi held the white tiger's paw tighter, and the soft white fur brushed against her palm. Not only did the other party tell her his name, but he even let her know his true identity. Did this mean that he wouldn't leave just like that? After saying goodbye, there would be no news of him from then on, and it would be a lifetime before they met again? Such a realistic touch made her slowly exhale. Her feet, which had been stepping on the clouds, finally stepped on solid ground. Sob. Meng Qi continued to sob softly. She pressed her forehead against the stiff white tiger's chest, and her tears fell even faster. The originally soft and smooth white fur on the white tiger's chest was messed up by her rubbing. Her tears condensed into puffs, and it looked rather pathetic. Don't! The white tiger slowly raised its other paw that wasn't hugged by Meng Qi. It paused in the air for a long time before it slowly put down its paw, as if it had made up its mind. It gently pressed on Meng Qi's thin shoulder. Don't cry. Sob, 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 sob. Yes, Meng Qi replied in a choked voice. She had always listened to Yun Qingyan's words and had never doubted it. Meng Qi immediately and slowly let go of the paw that she was hugging. She reluctantly stared at the paw that had been messed up by her. She took a deep breath and slowly sat up on her knees, placing her hands obediently on her knees. Meng Qi closed her eyes and took a few deep breaths before she managed to stop her tears from falling. She looked up. Her eyes, which had been washed by tears, were exceptionally bright. Her wet eyelashes made her look a little pitiful. Her eyes were red. The tip of her pretty nose was also red. The tears on her cheeks had yet to dry. She obediently knelt on the bed and quietly looked at the white tiger. The white tiger's paw that was stepping on the bed subconsciously tightened. He closed his eyes and ordered in a hoarse voice, "Close your eyes." Oh! When Meng Qi spoke, her voice was still slightly nasal. She sounded a little aggrieved. However, she still closed her eyes as she was told. Her wet eyelashes drooped down and trembled slightly. She was like a butterfly whose wings were wet by the rain. She could only weakly lie in the palm of someone's hand and be at his mercy. The white tiger took a deep breath. For a moment, a tyrannical emotion that he had never felt before emerged from his heart. He wanted to do the same to her just now. He hurriedly stopped himself from continuing to think. The girl in the green robe in front of him was already obedient enough. The sky demon white tiger's slender and healthy figure suddenly disappeared. In the blink of an eye, the handsome man in the white robe lazily sat cross-legged in front of Meng Qi. Yun Qinyan said faintly, "It's done." Meng Qi opened her left eye a little and quietly looked at Yun Qinyan. Then her eyes widened. "Qinyan's and Jun." As expected, he didn't intend to hide his identity in front of her at all. In an instant, Meng Qi felt as if she heard the spring breeze warming up and the sound of flowers blooming on the earth. She felt warm in her heart and looked at Yun Qinyan with sparkling eyes. Meng Qi immediately sat more upright on her knees and straightened her slightly thin back. "Yes," Yun Qinyan responded vaguely. In fact, Meng Qi's eyes were like this every time she looked at him, as if there were little stars twinkling in her eyes. However, it was the first time he saw such a happy expression. Even her eyebrows and eyes were like a spring breeze. Was she so happy just because she saw his real body? Yun Qinyan recalled that Meng Qi didn't seem to have any resistance to furry animals. His face slowly turned cold. He brushed his sleeve and covered his right hand. It seemed that Meng Qi's tears were still on it, which made him a little impatient. Neither of them noticed that the distance between the two of them was almost ambiguous. No matter how big the bed in Yun Qinyan's room was, the two of them weren't far from each other. As long as he stretched out his hand, he could pull Meng Qi to him. Yun Qinyan naturally couldn't do that. His gaze gradually turned cold. "Why are you looking for me?" Meng Qi didn't sleep and came to his room. She must have encountered something. Meng Qi was about to say that she was fine when she suddenly remembered the purpose of her visit. Qinyan's and Jun. She became anxious again. "I picked up an injured young sky demon white tiger." Meng Qi stammered and glanced at Yun Qinyan carefully. "Yun Qinyan, when it fell into the Starfall Sea, I checked it. It was still in the beast house in my storage bag. However, when I went back to my room to rest, little white tiger was no longer in the beast house." Meng Qi quickly said, "Qinyan's and Jun, please help me find him. He should be a cub of your race. However, I don't know why he fell into the tracheochasm and was seriously injured." "Skydeman white tiger." Yun Qinyan stared at Meng Qi. "A cub?" "Yes." Meng Qi nodded. When she saw the big white tiger lying there earlier, she also wondered if it was little Qi. However, this thought only flashed through her mind. Meng Qi dismissed this idea first. Yun Qinyan could kill a Nirvana fierce eagle with a raise of her hand and almost took her life. How could he be that pitiful little white tiger that was so seriously injured that she couldn't do anything about and slept most of the day? So, what if he's lost? Yun Qinyan lowered her eyes and said indifferently, "Why should we waste the effort to find him?" "No." Meng Qi raised her voice. Then, she suddenly realized that she was talking to Yun Qinyan. She quickly lowered her voice and explained softly, "He's injured. If he's also in the Starfall Sea, he definitely won't survive." "Oh." Yun Qinyan looked up slightly and looked at the green-robed girl kneeling in front of her. "You care about him a lot?" "Yes." Meng Qi nodded. She suddenly blushed. In the beginning, she had only wanted to heal little Seven because of his strange and serious injuries. As a doctor, she had wanted to heal him. At that time, Chu Tianfeng showed her the mirror image of perfected Lord White Tiger. At that time, Meng Qi didn't know that the master she missed so much in her previous life was perfected Lord White Tiger. However, since he looked exactly like her master, She couldn't just leave little Chi in the lurch. Later, after spending so much time together, Ming Chi, who didn't have any resistance to cute, fluffy animals, really liked this little guy. She really couldn't ignore his life and death now. If you care so much, you can find him yourself. Yun Qingyan said indifferently. You don't have to tell me. Huh? Meng Qi was stunned. Yun Qingyan didn't care? Wasn't little Qi also a heavenly demon white tiger? Did she make a mistake? It seemed it wasn't impossible. At that time, Chu Tianfeng only told her, and she just listened. However, little Qi really looked like Yun Qingyan's real body. Her eyes, in particular, were as clear and beautiful as sapphires. What's wrong? Yun Qingyan looked at Meng Qi, who was staring blankly at her, and asked lazily, Are you afraid of the Starfall Sea and don't dare to find him yourself? Yes. The girl in the green robe blushed again. She lowered her head, revealing the back of her fair and delicate neck. Qing Yanzhenjun, can you help me find little Qi, the heavenly demon little white tiger? Meng Qi murmured. She rarely asked for help, let alone Yun Qingyan. Previously, she didn't ask him to leave the Starfall Sea. Instead, she chose to find a way herself. Now, for the sake of little Qi, Meng Qi couldn't care less anymore. As soon as she said that, her face burned even hotter. Her cheeks turned crimson, and her long eyelashes trembled nervously. Yun Qingyan raised his eyebrows and looked at Meng Qi. You're begging me for him? Yes. Meng Qi's voice was even lower as she responded softly. She also felt that she was too thick-skinned. She didn't protect little Qi well, and now she had to beg Yun Qingyan to help. Okay, Yun Qingyan said lightly. Thank you, Qing Yanzhenjun. Hearing this, Meng Qi raised her head and looked at him with unusual joy. She turned around and nimbly jumped off the bed. Can we leave now? Meng Qi. Yun Qingyan also stood up. He took a step forward and stood in front of Meng Qi. Why did you save him? Yun Qingyan walked forward and asked casually. You also said that he was a cub of my clan. It shouldn't have anything to do with you. When I picked him up, he was already injured. Meng Qi hurriedly caught up with him. She didn't expect Yun Qingyan to ask this and subconsciously added, he was quite badly injured. At that time, she hesitated. Although she half-jokingly said that she didn't want to save him because he was a little male tiger, she would leave him alone. However, she knew that she would not leave him there. Otherwise, she would never be able to feel at ease. Because he was injured, you picked him up and wanted to save him. Huh? Yun Qingyan didn't stop walking. At this time, night had completely fallen around the great desolate island. After the two of them left the manor, the surroundings were dark except for the starlight. It looked a little strange. Yes, Meng Qi said. She couldn't tell Yun Qingyan the other reason. He didn't remember what she had experienced in her previous life. Meng Qi looked up at the other party's side profile. Yun Qingyan's perfect face was covered with a layer of soft starlight. Under the starry night, Meng Qi couldn't see his expression clearly and didn't know whether he was happy or angry. Meng Qi. Yun Qingyan took another step forward. The Starfall Sea was already in front of them. The starlight in the sky above the Starfall Sea was getting brighter and brighter. It was reflected in the water and looked magnificent, mysterious, and beautiful. The Starfall Sea is an uncrossable creature. No one can come to the great desolate island except on the one-leaf dreamboat. Yun Qingyan reached out and pointed at the quiet Starfall Sea. He said slowly, so when we crossed the sea and arrived here, your little white tiger was probably swallowed by the Starfall Sea and left inside. Meng Qi. She widened her eyes and looked at Yun Qingyan in disbelief. After 24 hours, all the creatures that fall into the sea will be turned into the 5-spirit vital energy. Yun Qingyan continued, it's less than 24 hours now. You still have a chance to save him. He waved his sleeve, and the canoe that brought them to the great desolate island drifted over and stopped on the shore. If you want to save him, you have to go by yourself. This one-leaf dream boat can't carry a third person. Yun Qingyan said calmly, but you have to think carefully. In another 2 hours, the Starfall Sea will explode and last for 24 hours. If you can't find him in 2 hours and can't return to the great desolate island in time, you will also fall into the sea and be swallowed by the Starfall Sea. You will become one of the thousands of 5 spirit vital energy here. Yun Qingyin's eyes were as bright as stars. He looked into Meng Qi's eyes. Do you want to go? Meng Qi. Meng Qi took a deep breath and turned her head to look at the vast and boundless Starfall Sea. She probably wouldn't even be able to search through a small area of the Starfall Sea in 2 hours. If she couldn't come back, she would also fall into the sea. There were only 2 hours. Meng Qi gritted her teeth and jumped onto the one-leaf dreamboat. Qin Yanzhenjun, she asked clearly, do you have a paddle? Meng Qi knew that she couldn't be like Yun Qinyin and make the boat as obedient as the wind in the Starfall Sea. But she still had to give it a try. She could first search along the way she came. Maybe little Qi was waiting for her to save him on the way here. Yun Qinyin didn't say anything. He stood tall and quietly on the shore, looking deeply at Meng Qi. Do you really want to go? He asked slowly. I have to try. Meng Qi raised her eyebrows. There are still 2 hours, right? Okay. Yun Qinyin flicked his sleeves. The boat didn't move. A soft wind suddenly wrapped around Meng Qi's waist and rolled her back to his side. Chapter 101. Meng Qi. Yun Qinyin put her down steadily. Let's go back. But little Qi will be fine. Yun Qingyin's tone was indifferent. After he finished speaking, he walked back the way he came. But Meng Qi frowned. She had never doubted his words. Not in the past and not now. She stood where she was and watched as Yun Qinyin walked away. He was dressed in a white robe, and his figure looked cold and lonely under the starlight. What's wrong? Yun Qinyin stood still. He turned sideways and looked at Meng Qi. You don't believe me? Meng Qi quickly shook her head. The worry on her face was still there, but her gaze towards Yun Qinyin was as clear as ever. There was no doubt in her eyes. Then come back with me, Yun Qinyin repeated. Meng Qi still didn't move. She just stared at Yun Qinyin and looked into his eyes. Meng Qi pursed her lips again and again. Her heart was beating faster and faster in her chest. A terrifying thought kept jumping in her mind. She tried her best to suppress it, but the thought became clearer and clearer. Qing Yanzhenjun, Meng Qi murmured. Yun Qinyin raised his eyebrows and turned around to meet the green-robed girl's gaze. Meng Qi stared at him in a daze. The thought became clearer and clearer, and her heart beat faster and faster, as if it was going to jump out of her throat. It was rare for Meng Qi to stutter. Little Qi is also from the heavenly demon White Tiger clan. Oh! Yun Qinyin nodded expressionlessly. Although it looks like a young white tiger, it looks like you, Meng Qi said. I know. Yun Qinyin was still expressionless and nodded again. Qin Yanzhenjun. Meng Qi took a deep breath. She looked at Yun Qingyin's perfect facial features. After being covered by a layer of starlight, they were dyed with a faint mystery, but they made her look even more handsome. Meng Qi suddenly asked, Are you little Qi? As soon as she spoke, her cheeks heated up. Before Yun Qinyin could reply, Meng Qi's face had already turned red. She had the same thought before, but Yun Qinyin was simply too strong. She really couldn't link him to the sickly little Qi, who could easily kill a super strong exotic beast like the Nirvana Arden Hawk. After all, Meng Qi had personally checked little Qi's injuries. Therefore, it wasn't that Meng Qi hadn't thought about it before, but she rejected this ridiculous idea first. When Yun Qinyin agreed to help her find the little white tiger, she was even more certain that the other party couldn't be little Qi. But now, he said to go back, and that little Qi would be fine. Qin Yanzhenjun wasn't such a cold and heartless person who didn't care about other people's lives. He never was. The thought that she had rejected suddenly appeared again, and it became clearer and clearer. Meng Qi's cheeks were red, and she was so hot that she was about to smoke. She still raised her head slightly and looked at Yun Qingyan without blinking. Under the starlight, the white-robed man's eyes were even brighter than the stars in the night sky. "Do you want me to be little Qi?" Yun Qingyan asked after a moment of silence. Meng Qi didn't quite understand. What did this have to do with whether or not he wanted her to be little Qi? Meng Qi. Yun Qingyan's lips curled up as he looked at the girl in the green robe with a faint smile. Meng Xiuya's face was full of confusion. He felt that he needed to remind her of what she had done in the past. "Think about what you have done to little Qi," Yun Qingyan said. "Ah!" Meng Qi was stunned, and countless scenes flashed through her mind. When they first met, Meng Qi felt as if she had been struck by lightning, and she was completely stunned. When they first met, she seemed to. Meng Qi suddenly lowered her eyes, not daring to continue looking at Yun Qingyan. Her cheeks were already red, and now they were so hot that they were about to explode. Even her temples seemed to be throbbing. "Meng Qi." Yun Qingyan slowly walked toward her. Even with her head lowered, Meng Qi could see the black boots that stopped in front of her, and the hem of the other party's robe swayed gently in the night with Yun Qingyan's movements. "Little Qi is absolutely fine. She is very safe now." Yun Qingyan lowered his head and looked at the girl's long black hair and fair and slender neck. There was a smile in his eyes, and even the corners of his lips were raised higher than before. "Do you understand?" Yun Qingyan said. "I understand." Meng Qi's voice trembled slightly as she answered softly. "Do you want to go back with me now?" Yes. Meng Qi replied repeatedly. "Let's go," Yun Qingyan said and turned around. Meng Qi still didn't follow. She hesitated and quickly glanced at Yun Qingyan. Although mentioning this question would inevitably bring up the awkwardness when they first met. "But, Qingyan, Meng Qi called him. She held back for a moment and blurted out, "Have you recovered from your previous injuries?" No wonder she always felt that Yun Qingyan was a little breathless and sounded very tired several times before. "I'm fine for the time being." Yun Qingyan's smile deepened. "Thank you for your concern." "That's good," Meng Qi murmured again. She happened to be able to see Yun Qingyan's hand hanging by his side. His fingers were long and slender, and his nails were smooth and neat. What did he mean by, "I'm fine for the time being"? Meng Qi was a little confused. Did he mean that he was fine for the time being in the Starfall Sea, but he didn't intend to be cured? Fanshu and Kanshu. Could he let her check his internal injuries? Meng Qi's fingers that were hanging by her side bent slightly. At that time, little Qi was so badly injured that she remembered that his spiritual ocean was almost torn into pieces. She couldn't see the formed spiritual ocean in his body at all. It was also because of this that she thought that the little white tiger was a cub. Meng Qi once heard Su Junmo nag that the spiritual ocean of a heavenly demon was somewhat different from the spiritual ocean of cultivators from the 3,000 worlds. Once they reached adulthood, they would be as tough as leather. No matter how badly injured they were, it was very rare for their entire spiritual ocean to completely fall apart like cultivators. Once the spiritual ocean of cultivators from the 3,000 worlds fell apart, their cultivation would be reduced to nothing. Unless a heaven realm medical cultivator helped, there was no possibility of recovery. Demon cultivators were different. The spiritual ocean of an adult demon cultivator was extremely difficult to tear apart. At that time, Su Junmo was so badly injured that his entire spiritual ocean was almost occupied by the divine devouring vine. But his spiritual ocean was not damaged at all. After Meng Qi cured him, he also recovered very quickly. However, that day, Meng Qi really didn't find the existence of a spiritual ocean in the little white tiger's body. That was why she thought that he was still a cub, heavenly demon white tiger. What about now? Had Yun Qingyan's spiritual ocean been repaired? He said that he was fine for the time being. Was he like Ji Wujiong, who was sometimes strong and sometimes weak because of his spiritual ocean? She pursed her lips. An injury to one's spiritual ocean was extremely serious for any cultivator from any world. Even if he had enough starlight, it wouldn't be possible to repair it in a short period of time. Could she ask? Meng Qi hesitated, but she had to mention what happened back then again. Her face burned again. Why don't we just forget about it today? Tomorrow. When the atmosphere was not so awkward tomorrow, everyone might forget about what happened tonight. Yes, she would ask tomorrow. Yun Qingyan did not move. He looked around and said to Meng Qi, "You can start refining the five-spirit cauldron." He pondered for a moment and said, "There are two materials that are extremely rare in the 3,000 worlds. You fell into the Starfall Sea by chance. You were quite lucky." Meng Qi wanted to cry. He even knew about the five-spirit cauldron and that she was short of materials. What was the difference between Yun Qingyan admitting that he was little Qi? She regretted it so much. Why did she act smart and ask Yun Qingyan that question? But what did she do to little Qi? Meng Qi did not dare to think about it. Anyway, it was, ugh, she had committed a heinous crime. The Starfall Sea is full of the five-spirit primordial Qi. Yun Qingyan continued, "It is the best place to refine the five-spirit cauldron." He finally turned around and walked forward. Meng Qi didn't even dare to raise her head. She obediently lowered her head and followed behind him, slowly moving forward. In the ancient times, tens of thousands of years ago, although the five-spirit primordial Qi was not common, it could be found in several places. Your senior Lin Yin. Yun Qingyan's eyes flashed with hostility. When she thought of Lin Yin, it was hard not to think of Ji Wujiong. The extreme and evil black-robed young man had once fought side by side with Meng Qi. In the end, she willingly stayed to live and die with him. The friendship cultivated like this was obviously different from other people's. Yes, Meng Qi's voice was as soft as a mosquito's. The era when she grew up is a little different from now. The five-spirit cauldron is her natal magic treasure. She generously gave it to you, but you did not acknowledge her as your master. Do you regret it? Yun Qingyan asked. I don't regret it. Meng Qi was still very firm when it came to this matter. I will inherit Senior Lin Yan's will. In the future, whether it is the five-spirit cauldron or the medical skills and spells she passed on to me, I will find the most suitable successor for her. But I don't regret it, she added. Meng Qi's words were firm. But when she thought of the things she had done to the little white tiger, she felt that her future was bleak. In her previous life, she was very respectful and had never done anything to make Yun Qingyan unhappy. In the end, she did not receive her approval and was barred from the sect. Sigh. Meng Qi sighed softly in her heart. Now, she could only take one step at a time. No matter what, she was better than in her previous life after this reunion. She was no longer a weak foundation establishment cultivator. When Meng Qi thought of this, she could not help but secretly look up and secretly glance at Yun Qingyan. The other party's expression was calm, and she could not tell if she was happy or angry. As if sensing her gaze, Yun Qingyan glanced at her. Meng Qi. She quickly retracted her gaze and continued to look down obediently. From the corner of her eye, she could only see Yun Qingyan's white robe fluttering lightly. Do you know the origin of the five-spirit cauldron's name? Yun Qingyan asked again. Yes. The book on refining the five-spirit cauldron states that the elixirs can be changed into the five elements according to one's needs. Meng Qi said, this way, even the same elixir can be refined into different elements. That's right, Yun Qingyan said. After one's cultivation level increases, even spirit energy can be refined into the five-spirit vital energy. Yes. Why can starlight repair the spiritual sea? Yun Qingyan continued. It can be used to refine spirit energy into the five-spirit vital energy and accumulate it in stardust. Meng Qi was stunned for a moment, and a faint idea emerged in her mind. She subconsciously turned her head and looked at the Starfall Sea around the great desolate island. Could it be that this place, whether it's demon cultivators, fiendish cultivators, or human cultivators in the three realms, when their spiritual sea is damaged, they can only rely on the five-spirit vital energy to repair it? Yun Qingyan continued, which is starlight. Meng Qi was stunned again. She was still looking at the Starfall Sea. Yun Qingyan said that the Starfall Sea was filled with the five-spirit vital energy. Didn't that mean Meng Qi suddenly turned her head and looked at Yun Qingyan excitedly. Qingyan's and Jun, there's so much five-spirit vital energy in the Starfall Sea. Doesn't that mean that no matter how damaged one's spiritual sea is, as long as one can enter this place, they can be repaired? Her eyes were bright and full of excitement. Even the awkwardness just now was temporarily forgotten. Yun Qingyan looked at her deeply. The faint smile in his eyes slowly froze. Meng Qi soon couldn't bear his gaze. She quickly turned her head and muttered as if she was talking to herself. Is it more useful than starlight? Yun Qingyan looked at her quietly. Did Meng Qi want to save Ji Wujiang? His voice gradually turned cold. It's more useful than starlight, but you need to be alive to get here. You also need to be able to withstand the violent power of the Starfall Sea, which is enough to destroy the world. Huh? Meng Qi frowned. Qin Yanzhenjun, is there nothing you can do? What do you think the one-leaf dreamboat is used for? Yun Qingyan said indifferently. Meng Qi didn't notice the change in his tone. She turned her head and looked at the Starfall Sea. Under the starry sky, the calm surface of the sea reflected the stars in the sky. At this time, the Starfall Sea was really as beautiful as the world of immortals. One couldn't imagine the terrible power contained in it. It seemed that this was the only way. Meng Qi nodded vigorously. She directly took out the bamboo slip that recorded the refining method of the five-spirit cauldron from her storage bag. Qing Yanzhenjun, I've formed my gold core now. I'm going to start refining the five-spirit cauldron. In fact, Meng Qi was still a little hesitant about whether she should use the five-spirit cauldron as her natal magic weapon or not. Meng Qi felt that a natal magic weapon like Shui Qingxian was also very useful. Among the medical cultivators in the Trichiliocosm, there were many who chose silver needles as their natal magic weapon. After the diagnosis, it was the treatment. If one couldn't even figure out what the other party's problem was, it was sometimes difficult to change one's fate no matter how powerful the medicinal pills were. She was very happy after getting the five-spirit cauldron. Ji Wujiang also said that it would be very powerful if she used it as her natal magic weapon. Meng Qi was still a little hesitant. For her, the medicinal cauldron she bought was enough. At worst, she could buy a better medicinal cauldron when her cultivation level was higher in the future. But now, her last trace of doubt was completely dispelled. Meng Qi said again, Qin Yanzhenjun, please guide me. Where can I find the heavenly materials and earthly treasures to refine the five-spirit cauldron in the Starfall Sea? As she spoke, she bowed respectfully to Yun Qingyan. Thank you, Qin Yanzhenjun. Yun Qingyan's eyes flashed slightly, and it was even colder than before. You want to refine the five-spirit cauldron? He had taken the initiative to propose this. Otherwise, the other party might not have thought of it. However, when he thought about it, Meng Qi didn't seem to have planned to refine the five-spirit cauldron so early. Now that he understood the five-spirit cauldron and the use of the five-spirit primordial energy, he immediately became impatient. To save Ji Wujiang, Yun Qingyan's eyelashes drooped, covering the light in his eyes. His gaze became dark, and his voice became slightly hoarse. It should be recorded on the bamboo slip that refining the five-spirit cauldron requires 5 pure 5-elements materials. Yes, Meng Qi said. She held the bamboo slip with both hands and respectfully handed it to Yun Qingyan. Qin Yanzhenjun, please take a look. No need. Yun Qingyan flicked his sleeve and rejected Meng Qi. Meng Qi didn't hide anything from him, and her completely unguarded attitude made him feel a little better. However, as soon as he thought that this was for Ji Wujiang, his gaze became more and more serene. You've seen Jiyu before, Yun Qingyan said. The sky dragon crystal, which represents water, and the chaos vine, which represents wood, can only be found in the demon realm and the devil realm, respectively, but they can be bought in the Outland. Yes, Meng Qi had never heard of these two things. They were probably expensive in the Outland, and he didn't know if he had enough spirit stones. The remaining Brahma sand and nether iron can only be found in the Starfall Sea, Yin Qingyan said. The five-spirit cauldron needs these 5 materials of the 5 elements to be successfully refined, But you don't need to find all 5 materials to start refining, Yin said. Yes. Meng Qi held the bamboo slip and nodded. It's also recorded that you can start refining with just 1 material. Every time you find a material, you can improve by 1 realm. Therefore, when the 5-spirit cauldron is completed, it's already a 6th realm natal magic weapon. Cultivators started from Qi refining, gold core, nascent soul, spirit severing, insightful emptiness. Insightful emptiness was the 6th realm, and once the 5-spirit cauldron was completed, it was equivalent to a magic weapon refined by an insightful emptiness cultivator. Moreover, cultivators who used natal magic weapons were not limited by their own realms. In other words, if Meng Qi could find 5 heavenly materials and produce treasures and refine the 5-spirit cauldron, then she would have a 6th realm magic weapon that only insightful emptiness cultivators could have. She could even directly refine a 6th realm elixir that could be used by insightful emptiness cultivators. With the help of the Grand Fire Formation, she could refine a 7th realm elixir that only insightful emptiness cultivators could use. Of course, Meng Qi also knew that it would be difficult to find these 5 heavenly materials and produce treasures. She might not even be able to find 3 of them when she reached the insightful emptiness stage. This was also one of the reasons why she was hesitant to use the 5-spirit cauldron as her natal magic weapon, because the materials were too rare. For example, if Yin didn't say anything, Meng Qi had never heard of Ming Tai and Fan Sha, so she didn't know where to find them. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Yin turned around. Now go back and rest. His voice was a bit cold, and he left with a flick of his sleeve. Meng Qi didn't think much of it. Yin was only fine for the time being. His words also meant to tell her that he hadn't recovered from his injuries. On the way back to the manor, Meng Qi couldn't help but glance at him from time to time. Even when she lay on the bed in her room again, she still felt that it was a bit unreal. Too many things had happened today. Meng Qi widened her eyes and looked at the light muslin bed curtain in the darkness. She saw Yin's real body and then realized that he was actually. Meng Qi turned over and buried her head in the blanket. As long as this thought flashed through her mind, she felt extremely ashamed. She seemed to have rubbed her head and pinched her claws and her ears and her chin. Meng Qi reached out and quickly knocked her head several times. Why couldn't she control herself back then? Even if it was a young sky demon white tiger, it was still a great sky demon, a royal sky demon. She closed her eyes, and the little white tiger's cute appearance appeared in her mind again. Azure blue eyes, fluffy semicircular ears, round little claws, soft and clean white fur. Meng Qi clenched and relaxed her fingers. Woo, stroking the little white tiger felt good for a moment, but it was really good to stroke. She hugged the blanket and rolled a few more times on the bed. It was rare for Meng Qi to be unable to fall asleep. Whenever she closed her eyes, other than the little white tiger, she would see Yin's deep eyes looking at her with a faint smile. What a sin! Meng Qi rolled a few more times. She had committed such a heinous and rebellious act. She still hoped that Master would accept her as his disciple in this lifetime. It was probably the last bit of kindness that Yin had shown by not throwing her into the Starfall Sea directly. In the end, Meng Qi didn't even know when she fell asleep. When she woke up, the room was still a little dark, but there was still a faint light shining in through the window. Meng Qi opened her eyes and looked at the muslin bed curtain above her in a daze. The memories of last night flooded her mind again. She sat up abruptly and quickly jumped off the bed. As she put on her shoes and walked out quickly, she used a simple spell to summon water and freshen up. Ah! Meng Qi couldn't help but exclaim softly as soon as she opened the door. In the sky, the morning sun had already risen, and the soft rays of sunlight shone down. However, she could still see the twinkling stars in the sky. Although they were far from being as bright as at night, they could still be seen clearly, and their brilliance wasn't obscured by the sunlight at all. Meng Qi stared blankly for a moment. So the Starfall Sea was this strange. The sky wasn't the usual sky blue of the 3 realms. Instead, it was a little like a large piece of clear light jade, similar to the color of the Star Lake in Starfall Valley. Looking at it like this, the entire sky seemed beautiful and a little strange. Yun Xinyan's door also opened with a creak. The white-robed man stood tall. "You're awake?" "Qin Yanzhenjun." Meng Qi blushed when she saw him now. She lowered her head, not daring to meet his gaze. She murmured, "Morning." "Come with me," Yun Xinyan said, taking the lead to walk forward. Meng Qi hurriedly followed. The two of them left the manor and walked to the other end of the great desolate island. Meng Qi followed closely behind him and did not ask where they were going. The Starfall Sea looked even more charming during the day than at night. The sunlight shone on the surface of the sea as if it was sprinkling a handful of gold fragments. The tiny waves sparkled with golden light, no different from the lakes in the Three Realms. However, the reflections of the stars could still be seen in the sea. They walked for about half an hour and arrived at the southernmost part of the great desolate island. This was a crescent-shaped promontory, and the waves were bigger than other places. A mountain stood on the promontory. There were no plants on the rugged mountain. It was bare and looked a little strange. "This is?" Meng Qi asked as he looked at Yun Xinyan. "You can find nether iron here," Yun Xinyan said. "Besides." Before he finished speaking, his gaze moved slightly as he looked up the mountain. Meng Qi followed his gaze and looked over. "There," she focused her gaze. "There seems to be someone there." Yun Xingyan's face is green, where she couldn't control herself at all when she saw the difficult and complicated diseases. "Oh, my eyes hurt yesterday, so I had to ask for leave. I've made everyone wait for a long time then. I found out today that I'm only 1 meter away from the season list. I'm excited. This is the first time I'm so close to the season list. Can my baby send me up there? Even if it's just for a day, I'll be satisfied. But this requires the support of everyone's comments. Little angels, please work hard and comment more, okay?" Chapter 102. At the foot of Cape Mountain in the southernmost part of the great desolate island, it was about the place where the waves of the fallen star sea were the strongest. The five spirits' primordial chi in the fallen star sea kept rising and slapping towards the cliff. Except for the lack of splashing water, the momentum sounded quite scary. The wind was also very strong, and Meng Qi's green robe was fluttering in the wind. Yun Qinyan beside her was also in a similar situation. Her sleeves were blown by the wind, and Meng Qi would be brushed from time to time. "It seems to be..." Meng Qi tiptoed slightly and looked over. She could only see that there seemed to be a black figure on the cliff, but most of it was covered by the bare stones on the mountain, so she couldn't see the other party's specific appearance. "I'll go and take a look," Meng Qi said, and quickened her pace. Yun Xinyan stopped and looked at Meng Qi quietly. The green-robed girl's figure was slender and agile, and she soon climbed halfway up the mountain. However, the black figure was on the other side. Meng Qi looked around, carefully held a stone on the side, and leaned to the side. The black figure lay quietly on the ground, motionless. Meng Qi could now see the other party's complete figure. It should be a woman in a black robe. Her hair was black, and she was wearing a hair accessory made of blood-colored coral beads. Even though she was dressed in a black robe, it could not hide her exquisite figure. She had a slender waist, and her long hair was scattered on her back, almost reaching her waist. "Qin Yanzhenjun." Meng Qi turned her head and called out, "It's a female cultivator." She should have fainted. As she spoke, she carefully moved a few steps in that direction. Meng Qi saw a small platform beside the woman in black that could accommodate one person. Her figure flashed and stood on it. She leaned over and gently pressed 2 fingers on the side of the woman's neck. "She's still alive." Meng Qi withdrew her fingers and looked around awkwardly. The woman in black was completely lying on the cliff, motionless. Not far away, the 5 spirits' primordial chi in the fallen star sea was still stirring up waves and then slamming heavily at the foot of the mountain. If not for the gentle slope of the mountain, the black-clothed woman would have fallen back into the Starfall Sea. Meng-Chi did not dare to act rashly. She first took out a ribbon from her storage bag and bent over to tie it around the woman's wrist. The other end of the ribbon was firmly held in her hand. She took a deep breath, bent down, and picked up the woman in black and rushed down the mountain in one breath. Oh! Meng-Chi placed the woman in black on a flat ground at the foot of the mountain. She reached out to tidy up the girl's hair. Her waist-length hair was brushed aside, revealing a pale and petite face. The woman looked very young. She had delicate eyebrows, cherry lips, and a straight nose. Even though her lips were pale and her eyes were closed, she was still a rare beauty. Meng-Chi tilted his head slightly and looked down from her pale face. She reached out and gently pinched the woman's chin, tilting her head to the side. Amidst her hair, he could see her small ears. There was a small black flame on the smooth and white skin behind her ear. Although the flame was very small, it seemed to be burning fiercely. Meng-Chi subconsciously raised her head and looked at Yun Qingyan, who had already walked to her side. Qingyan, what is this? It was not a mark left behind by an injury. It was a bit like a mark left on a person by some kind of spell. Fiendish cultivator. Yun Qingyan glanced at it, raised her eyebrows, and said lightly, "Fiendish cultivator?" Meng-Chi's expression was slightly cold. She did not have a good impression of the fiendish realm. Just the books she had read recorded many times when the fiendish realm invaded the 3,000 worlds. Every time they burned, killed, and plundered, the sects were often destroyed one by one. Just the medical cultivators alone, who knew how many sects had been destroyed by the fiendish cultivators. Meng-Chi subconsciously retracted her finger. The woman in black was still lying quietly on the ground, unaware. Her face was too pale, and her lips were even a little bruised. Compared to the demon realm, which had a good relationship with the 3,000 worlds and even had demon cultivators like Su Junmo, the fiendish realm seemed unfamiliar, mysterious, and cruel. Meng-Chi bent her finger slightly. She just wanted to see what kind of injury the other party had suffered. She did not have to save her. She pursed her lips, formed a spell with her left hand, and pointed at the woman's forehead. The gentle light of the spell illuminated the woman's beautiful face, which was almost gorgeous. The other party's eyelashes were long and curly, making her small cheeks look even more exquisite. Meng-Chi closed her eyes and focused on checking the other party's condition. Yun Qingyan looked at the girl in the green robe, who was kneeling on the ground with her eyes closed. He had already guessed that Meng-Chi would do this. It was harder to let Meng-Chi die than to take her life. A faint smile flashed across Yun Qingyan's eyes, and she turned to look to the side. The Starfall Sea had completely calmed down. The surface of the sea shone with golden light, and it was beautiful. But last night, it had probably been crazy enough to tear apart everything in the world. For this female cultivator to be able to come to the great desolate island, she should be a very strong combat concubine of the demon realm. Yun Qingyan's gaze swept indifferently across the black robe on the woman's body. The black robe was much more fitting than the cultivator robes of the 3,000 worlds, and it completely outlined the other party's slender figure. There were also dark red patterns embroidered on the sleeves, chest, and hem of the robe. Yun Qingyan glanced at the dark red patterns, and his gaze turned cold. His lips curled. The other party was quite daring. At the same time, Meng-Chi also opened her eyes. "Are her injuries serious?" Yun Qingyan asked. "Her spiritual sea has been completely torn apart," Meng-Chi said. "I have never seen such a shattered spiritual sea." Compared to her, the cracks in Ji Wujiang's spiritual sea were not even worth mentioning. This girl's spiritual sea had been completely shattered, and there was no more Ling energy left. If it wasn't for the fact that the fragments of the spiritual sea could still be seen, and the dim and lightless Niden that could be seen after Jindan, the black-robed female was no different from a normal person. What kind of terrifying power could tear the spirit sea into pieces like this? Meng-Chi took back her hand and stood up. Also, she was able to survive even with her spiritual sea in such a state, so her Niden was complete. Usually, when the spiritual sea was shattered like this, the Niden would also be damaged. Qing Yan's Jun. She turned to look at Yun Qingyan. What grade is she? Meng Qi had very little contact with Mo Xiao and knew very little about the Mo world. She only knew that they were cruel and bloodthirsty, but all of them were extremely powerful. Also, among the Mo Xiao, other than having inherited many formations like the Yao world, the strongest weapon cultivator was said to be in the Mo world. 5th grade, equivalent to your severed spirit Xiozha. Almost at the great perfection of the severed spirit, Yun Qingyan glanced and said, her spiritual sea is shattered, but her Niden is intact. However, without the nourishment of the endless Ling energy, it is slightly dim, Meng Qi murmured. She seemed to be talking to Yun Qingyan, but also seemed to be talking to herself. I don't know what kind of power can damage the spiritual sea of a Xiozha, who is almost at the great perfection of the severed spirit to such a state. 5 spirit primal energy. Yun Qingyan's lips curled slightly. It can repair the cracks in the spiritual sea, but the 5 spirit primal energy in the Starfall Sea can also cause the spiritual sea to shatter. Because it is too much and too strong, normal Xiozha cannot withstand it. So that's how it is? Meng Qi nodded. This was easy to understand. Water could carry a boat, but it could also capsize it. Some spirit medicines were the same. Once the dosage was exceeded, they would turn from spirit medicines that could cure illnesses into poisonous medicines. Similarly, some seemingly poisonous medicines could also cure illnesses and save lives if the dosage was appropriate. Meng Qi looked at the black-clothed woman lying quietly on the ground. She looks quite young. I wonder if she has been to the Trichiliocosm, she murmured. The corners of Yun Qingyan's lips curled up slightly again. He did not reply. He just looked at Meng Qi quietly. The green-robed girl stood with her hands by her side. Her face was full of, I want to try. I want to cure her. I want to save her. Even her fingers, which were hanging by her side, would bend slightly from time to time. Meng Qi pursed his lips again and murmured, she looks very young, and she is also a demonic Xiozha who is about to reach the great perfection of the severed spirit. She should have never been to the Trichiliocosm, right? After all, the barrier is obstructive. Unless there is an expert to help forcefully break through the barrier, it is very difficult for a severed spirit Xiozha to cross the barrier of the 3 realms. Yun Qingyan, the demon realm. It seems that the demon realm has not invaded the Trichiliocosm on a large scale for several hundred years. Usually, at most, 4th grade demonic Xiozha or demonic beasts quietly pass through the barrier and are quickly eliminated. Meng Qi continued dryly. Qing Yanzhenjun. She turned her head and looked at Yun Qingyan eagerly. Is that so? The demonic Xiozha's realm division is somewhat different from the Trichiliocosm. Yun Qingyan found it funny. He realized that he liked to see Meng Qi in a difficult position and eagerly trying to save someone. Yes. Meng Qi finally got a response from him and nodded repeatedly. The experts among them not only need to raise their cultivation realm, but also need battle achievements. Yun Qingyan continued. The demon realm is actually fragmented and has never been unified. Under the Great Demon Realm, the 33 demon realms are divided into 5 major forces. The flames of war between them are constant, and from time to time, they would invade the Trichiliocosm and even the demon realm. He paused and looked at Meng Qi's pale face. A trace of amusement and pity flashed through his heart. Was it that uncomfortable? Was Meng Qi really that uncomfortable when she encountered an injured person, especially one with strange injuries that she could not treat? Azu. Orgi barely hid the smile in his voice and continued. The 5 major forces divide the demon realm. The strongest force of each force is called the Great Demon Residence. Meng Qi nodded repeatedly again. She looked obedient, and her eyes were full of anticipation. Yun Qingyan coughed lightly and almost raised his hand to rub Meng Qi's fluffy little head. Although the girl's soft hair was far from being as soft as their clan's fur, it should be very neat and easy to touch. Perhaps it would be like her body, with a faint, slightly bitter, but very elegant medicinal fragrance. Yun Qingyan turned his gaze away and did not look at Meng Qi's expectant eyes. He continued, "The great demon residence is often an ancient demonic Xiuzhi family with a legacy. After tens of thousands of years of tempering, their combat power is extremely strong." And Yun Qingyan's gaze fell on the unconscious girl. The tattoo behind her ear means that she has a place in the great demon residence. Meng Qi. Such female Xiuzhi are called the demon realm's war concubines. They are powerhouses who have experienced countless battles. Every time the flames of war ignite, they will not leave and guard the master of the great demon residence, who is also the master they swore allegiance to, Yin Qingyan said. So it's impossible for her to be a war concubine of the demon realm without blood on her hands. I just don't know if it's a demonic Xiuzhi, a demon beast, or... Yun Qingyan glanced at Meng Qi indifferently. The meaning of his words was self-evident. Meng Qi's face was full of disappointment. In fact, she had already guessed that since it was a demonic Xiuzhi, it was an enemy of their trichiliocosm. Although she swore that she would never leave them in the lurch, she would not save such an enemy who might kill her compatriots. "I understand," Meng Qi responded in a low voice. Qin Yanzhenjun had made it so clear that she could no longer deceive herself and continue to find such a mess of excuses. Meng Qi's fingers that were hanging by her side curled slightly again. "Meng Qi." Yun Qingyan's eyes were bright. "You can save her, HM?" Meng Qi suddenly turned her head, her eyes bright. But her gaze quickly dimmed again. "I'd better not." She pursed her lips and said in a low voice, "Senior Lin Yin, who we met in the barrier of the great demon realm, was originally the strongest among our medical Xiuzhi. Dongjun became a profound realm great doctor. In the ancient era, she really had the chance to become an earth realm great doctor, or even a heaven realm great doctor." Meng Qi said, "But the demonic Xiuzhi invaded, and the Xiuzhi and ordinary citizens of the 6 cities and 8 towns were in danger. The cities were about to be destroyed, and the people were in a terrible situation. Senior Lin Yin voluntarily lost all of her cultivation and dropped 2 major realms to save them. But it will be difficult for her to advance in her life." Meng Qi said in a low voice, "We medical Xiuzhi will not save a poisonous snake that will bite when it wakes up. Her Ling Si is completely damaged. It will not be able to recover in a day." Yun Qingyan said, "Since you are going to forge the 5-spirit cauldron, you can use her to practice and help you forge the 5-spirit cauldron." His tone was calm. "Even if her Ling Si is repaired, she will need at least 3 to 5 days to recover. You can kill her then." "Meng Qi," Yun Qingyan said, "what do you think?" Meng Qi looked dazedly at him and did not speak. Yun Qingyan's lips curved slightly. "Also, aren't you forging the 5-spirit cauldron to repair other people's Ling Sis? 5-spirit primal Qi is not an ordinary thing. Without anyone to practice with, you plan to try it on the person you want to save?" Meng Qi stilled and could not speak for a moment. Yun Qingyan's words were reasonable, but she felt a chill slowly rising from her back that she had never felt before when she was with him. Meng Qi's body could not help but tremble slightly. Since the black-clothed woman was a demon realm war concubine and her hands were stained with blood, she had no intention of saving her. But the other party was a demonic Xiuzhi. Even if she was an enemy, she had never thought that she could do such a thing. In Meng Qi's eyes, medical skills were medical skills. It was the great Tao of cultivation that she would firmly pursue for the rest of her life, even if she died. Of course, she was also a Xiuzhi. In order to protect herself and to save people, she would also do it. But Meng Qi looked down at the black-clothed woman lying on the ground in a daze. The other party's small face was pale. Just by looking at her appearance, she was not much older than her. Even if she deserved to die, Meng Qi could not do that. Meng Qi took a deep breath. For the first time, after Yun Qingyan spoke, she did not obediently agree with a yes. "Qin Yanzhenjun." She looked up. Her clear eyes seemed to be able to look straight into Yun Qingyan's heart. "I can't do this." Meng Qi's tone was firm. "Saving people is saving people. Hurting people is hurting people. In order to protect myself or save people, it's okay to hurt people. But I can't do this. She frowned slightly. For a moment, she felt that she could not explain clearly. I can't do such a thing. I can't confuse saving people with hurting people. That is not in line with my great Tao. After Meng Qi finished speaking, she cupped her hands towards Yun Qingyan. Thank you for your guidance, Qing Yanzhenjun. Please forgive me for not being able to comply. Really? Yun Qingyan raised her eyebrows, her gaze languid. Do you know that a demon realm war concubine who is about to reach the consummation of the spirit severing stage coincidentally has her spiritual C completely damaged? If you use her spiritual C to refine your 5-spirit cauldron, what you get in the end will be a very powerful, life-bonded magic treasure. Or in the next few hundred years, no one in the medical cultivation world can defeat you. No. Meng Qi shook her head firmly. No matter how powerful the 5-spirit cauldron is, it can't become my life-bonded magic treasure. The life-bonded magic treasure of the cultivators in the 3,000 worlds needed to be connected to the cultivator's mind. Meng Qi felt uncomfortable just imagining herself using this method to refine the 5-spirit cauldron. Every strand of her hair was rejecting it. Not to mention the life-bonded magic treasure, she even suspected that if she really did this, her Tao heart would be damaged. From then on, it would be difficult for her medical cultivation to improve. Ha! Yun Qingyan chuckled. Meng Qi, what about the friend you want to save by refining the 5-spirit cauldron? Aren't you going to save her? Meng Qi looked up and glanced at him in a daze. Yun Qingyan reminded her. If the other party really needed her, she would definitely save them, but she couldn't do that. Otherwise, she wouldn't be the only one who would be implicated. She might even affect the other party. I have to save her. Meng Qi's tone was firm. But I can't do that. Click, a light sound was heard. Just after Meng Qi said this, a soft sound suddenly came from her spiritual sea. Meng Qi was a little surprised, but Yun Qingyan was still here, so she didn't immediately investigate what had happened. Meng Qi, oh Meng Qi. Yun Qingyan flicked his sleeves and stood up. The way he looked at Meng Qi was much warmer than before. Yes, Meng Qi answered respectfully. You can save her, he repeated. But, as I said just now, the demon world is fragmented. It has never been unified for tens of thousands of years. Yun Qingyan waved his hand, indicating for her to stop talking. He put his hands behind his back and turned to look at the Starfall Sea. Among the 5 major forces, some of the masters of the great demon residents are cruel and bloodthirsty. They're the ones who sent people to invade the 3 realms 9 out of 10 times. But there is also one force, Yun Qingyan said, that has been passed down for tens of thousands of years and occupies the 5 demon heavens of the 33 heavens of the demon world. Meng Qi quickly calculated. It didn't seem bad. This great demon residence is a little special. It is said that the first master was the child of a demon cultivator and a human cultivator after they fell in love. Later on, the 3 realms were divided. For some reason, the child went to the demon world and fell in love with a demon cultivator and had descendants. Meng Qi. It sounded a little complicated. That's why the great demon residence has always been very close to the 3 realms and the demon world. Yun Qingyan said, not only has it never invaded the 2 realms, but it has also helped a lot, treating and stopping a lot of killings. Meng Qi nodded. She had always believed that there was no such thing as an absolutely bad clan. As a red fox, Sikong Xing was very good. As a demon cultivator, there were also bad guys like Sikong Yin. There would also be, she looked up at Yin Qingyan. There would also be people like Qing Yanzhenjun, the best person in the 3 realms. Meng Qi's face heated up. She actually doubted Qing Yanzhenjun just now. Seriously, even if she thought with her feet, she knew that he definitely didn't think that way. He was definitely just testing her. She adjusted her expression and became more serious. Yun Qingyan glanced at her and continued, this great demon residence is marked by black flames. He raised the corners of his lips and smiled sarcastically. The demon world advocates red, which is the color of blood. They think that that is the purest color. The other 4 great demon residences are marked by red, but they think that the master of this great demon residence has an impure bloodline and is a bastard from the demon world. So they don't allow them to use red. So they were forced to use black? Meng Qi asked. Not really, Yun Qingyan said lightly. The master of the great demon residence who chose black as his clan's emblem once said that black and red didn't matter. If one's Dao heart is firm, the great Dao will naturally be in front. Meng Qi was stunned, and the blood in her chest seemed to be ignited. She looked into the distance. The Starfall Sea was vast and boundless. She thought back to the time when the previous master of the great demon residence was surrounded by strong enemies. Even though he was ostracized and isolated by his own clan, and was ordered not to use red by those who were clearly of the same clan, he shouldn't have cared at all. He should have been upright and confident, talking and laughing with vigor. Meng Qi's eyes flashed. Such a person really made people yearn for him. So the tattoo behind her ear is a black flame. She should be their war concubine. Yun Qingyan said, She can be saved? Yes. Meng Qi nodded heavily. Save her. She was so elated that she forgot that she was still in the Starfall Sea. Meng Qi bent down, made a hand seal with her fingers, and gently tapped the black-clothed woman's forehead. Just now, she had only probed the woman's spirit sea and found that her spirit chi was completely gone. Now that she looked more carefully, she found that not only was the woman's spirit sea shattered, but her internal organs also seemed to be injured. Meng Qi withdrew her hand and frowned. She seemed to have been injured by someone, and she should have been injured before falling into the Starfall Sea. Otherwise, with her spirit sea shattered like this, such a serious injury should have taken her life. She took out a small porcelain bottle from her storage bag. There were 2 9-yang pills inside, which were very effective for internal injuries. And this was the version that Meng Qi sealed with the 9-yang pills. She reached out and pinched open the woman's mouth and stuffed the 2 9-yang pills into her mouth. Yun Qingyan stood to the side and watched Meng Qi busy herself. The green-robed girl's expression was calm, and her elegant eyes were actually very delicate. The sunlight gilded her long eyelashes with a faint layer of soft light. Every time she was serious, perhaps even Meng Qi herself didn't notice, but there would always be 2 small dimples at the corners of her lips. Yun Qingyan's indifferent gaze swept over the unconscious demon realm battle concubine. The other party's appearance was gorgeous and could be said to be peerless. In fact, Meng Qi didn't lose to her, but she wasn't as dazzling. But the orchids in the mountains were also beautiful and otherworldly, enough to intoxicate people. Qing Yanzhenjun. Meng Qi simply treated the black-clothed woman's injuries. The rest couldn't be healed in a short time. Now, it seemed that she really had to refine the 5-spirit cauldron. Meng Qi stood up, turned to look at Yun Qingyan, and asked, By the way, what's the name of the great devil residence's master you mentioned just now? Yun Qingyan looked at her deeply and said indifferently, The master of the great devil residence's surname is Ji. Chapter 103. Ji. Meng Qi stilled. Yes. Yun Qingyan glanced at her, and then at the unconscious female, demonic Xiao. Meng Qi's Dan medicine took effect quickly. He remembered that it was the Dan recipe that Xue Qingxian of the Xue family had given her. Go get the nether iron now, Yun Qingyan said. Yes. Meng Qi nodded, and her gaze swept across the female's face. Her spirit sea had been shattered, but her life was not in danger for now. There was no need to rush. Also, if she really wanted to completely repair the other spirit sea, she probably had to forge the 5-spirit cauldron first. Meng Qi did not continue to ask. Even though she had the same surname as Ji Wujiong, there were so many people with the surname Ji in the world. Hadn't she met a Xiuzhe called Ji Wenyuan before? She quickly threw this thought to the back of her mind and turned to look at the mountain in front of her. The nether iron should be in the belly of the mountain. Yun Qingyan walked towards the mountain. In the sea of fallen stars, the 5 spirit primal energies were used as knives and brushes. After countless years, they carved the rocks on the cliffs. Yun Qingyan was already standing in front of the mountain. He raised his head slightly and looked at the bare little mountain. Meng Qi stood next to him, shoulder to shoulder. Yun Qingyan glanced at her and then turned to look forward. He looked at the mountain that was not very tall and said to Meng Qi, "Some formations are driven by spirit energy. They do not have to be drawn on the ground." Meng Qi stilled. Before she could think more, Yun Qingyan had already moved. He raised his right hand, and his slender fingers casually moved in the air. Wherever Yun Qingyan's fingers passed, faint white light was left. His movements were fast, but not especially fast. At least, Meng Qi could see clearly. It was as though he was deliberately moving at full speed, so she could see clearly. However, it was not slow at all. In the blink of an eye, a faint, complete formation was left in the air. This was a bit like the experts of the sword faction. After they returned to their original state, no matter how fast they attacked, they could still easily see the traces of each sword. However, no matter how clearly they saw it, they could not dodge it. Yun Qingyan casually flicked out a few spirit stones. Meng Qi, Mystic Spirit Stone. She herself had used the Xian Spirit Stone in the array a few times, but she had been fighting for her life, so she couldn't care less at the crucial moment. Normally, it was already quite extravagant to use 7th and 8th ranks. The formation that was flashing with a faint white light in the air was suddenly activated by the spirit stones, and it shone brightly. Yun Qingyan raised her finger, and a white light shot towards the small mountain as fast as lightning. The other party wanted to before Meng Qi could finish his thought. There was a loud bang. Rubble flew into the air, and more than half of the hill was blown up. She felt something tighten around her waist. Yun Qingyan's sleeves were around her waist, protecting her as they retreated. So Qin Yanzhenjun wanted to blow up the hill. Yun Qingyan put Meng Qi down, took a step forward, and half covered her body. Meng Qi tilted her head slightly and looked forward from behind him. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. The originally rugged hill was blown into countless stones and tumbled chaotically into the Starfall Sea. The 5 spirits' primordial qi seemed to be in a mess in an instant, but soon, those huge stones were completely swallowed up, and the Starfall Sea returned to calm. Meng Qi couldn't help but be speechless. Her eyesight was quite good. After those stones tumbled into the sea, they didn't sink to the bottom at all. Instead, they were completely swallowed up by the 5 spirits' primordial qi in an instant and probably became a part of the Starfall Sea's 5 spirits' primordial qi. Meng Qi swallowed her saliva. She had thought that it was quite good to have so much 5 spirits' primordial qi. It seemed that everything in the world was as bad as not enough. No wonder Qin Yanzhenjun said, just now, that too much 5 spirits' primordial qi is no longer used to treat illnesses, but is enough to tear apart the spiritual sea of a spirit-severing stage cultivator. She looked up at Yun Qingyan and murmured, "These 5 spirits' primordial qi are really powerful when gathered together." Yun Qingyan nodded slightly and walked forward again. The whole hill was almost completely flattened by him. Meng Qi followed him and looked left and right. Qin Yanzhenjun was really powerful. Although she had always known that he was very powerful, she still felt amazed every time she saw him. Just like that, he flattened a mountain as if it was nothing. It was really too powerful. At the foot of the completely flattened hill, countless black stones with a metallic luster were revealed. Meng Qi walked to the black stones and saw them clearly. Those stones were originally brown, but each stone was inlaid with many black crystals about the size of a thumb, with sharp edges and corners. "Is this nether iron?" "Yes," Yun Qingyan said. "This should be enough for you." "All right." Meng Qi took out a medicine knife from her storage pouch without thinking. The silver medicine knife looked thin, but was actually very tough and sharp. "Try the silver moon sword diagram," Yin Qing Yin ordered coolly. All right. Meng Qi obeyed. When she swung the knife, she used the moves and spells of the silver moon sword diagram. As expected, wherever her medicine knife passed, the stones inlaid with nether iron were dug up whole. It is useless to use it to defend against enemies, but it can be used for mining. Yun Qingyin's tone was cool. Meng Qi, you know formations. You don't need to learn sword moves or offensive spells to protect yourself. The formations are enough for you. Okay. Meng Qi dug up all the nether iron that she could see. She happily put all the nether iron into her storage pouch. After putting it away, she remembered and hurriedly said, Qing Yan's and Jun, I will clean up all the nether iron and send it to you. I have no use for it, Yin Qing Yin said. You can keep it to refine the 5-spirit cauldron. Thank you, Qing Yan's and Jun. Meng Qi bowed obediently. The 5-spirit cauldron did not require all the materials. It could only be used after it was completely refined. After refining the initial small cauldron, every material added could directly raise the level of the cauldron by a large realm. If all 5 kinds of natural treasures were found, the 5-spirit cauldron would not only become a 6th-level natal magic treasure. Like its name, it could also convert the 5 elements of pills and even directly refine the herbs into the 5-spirit primordial qi. At that time, it could be used to repair the spirit sea. Of course, if it was used to refine medicine, it had its own uses. A natal magic treasure could connect with the mind of a cultivator, just like the sword spirit of a sword xiao. In the future, Meng Qi would be able to better control the heat and even all the minute changes in the process of refining the herbs if she used it to refine medicine. This way, the success rate would be higher and the effect of the medicine would be greatly improved. Meng Qi exhaled and couldn't help but look at the nether iron in her storage pouch. Her luck was really good. She looked up at Yun Qingyin. Of course, when she was with Yun Qingyin, her luck was always good. Meng Qi couldn't help but smile. Let's go back, Qingyan and Jun. As she spoke, she quickly walked to the still unconscious Mo. Jeb battle concubine and bent down to pick her up. Of course, Meng Qi could not let Yun Qingyan do this kind of thing. Not to mention that she originally wanted to save the woman in black, even if Yun Qingyan wanted her. It was natural for the disciple to serve the master. Meng Qi's hands were very steady. The tall and slender woman in black wasn't heavy either. She carefully held her neck and knees and held her in her arms. The woman in black should be slightly taller than her. Yun Qingyan glanced at the two of them. The slender girl was holding another girl who was slightly taller than her, and she looked as if it was natural for her to do so. Meng Qi's careful appearance made it seem like she was holding a treasure that she had to carefully protect. Qing Yanzhenjun? Meng Qi tilted her head slightly and looked at Yun Qingyan curiously. You're holding her like this. Yun Qingyan glanced at her. Meng Qi looked down at the black-clothed girl in her arms. Oh, she's not heavy. Qing Yanzhenjun. Meng Qi smiled again and said with some rare pride, I've already formed my gold core. It's no problem for me to hold a girl like this. As soon as she said that, her face turned red. She seemed to be deliberately showing off, trying to prove that she wasn't that weak. She wondered if Yin Qingyan would find out about her little scheme. Meng Qi quietly and quickly glanced at Yun Qingyan's face from the corner of her eyes. She didn't dare to look at her anymore. She turned around and strode back the way they came with the woman in black in her arms. Let's go back quickly. Qing Yanzhenjun. Meng Qi walked quickly, but her hands holding the woman in black were still very steady. Although the woman's life wasn't in danger for the time being, she was still unconscious. But after all, she was so seriously injured that her spiritual sea was completely shattered. Meng Qi still didn't want her to be injured a second time. With a soft sound, Meng Qi hadn't taken a few steps when a dark green shadow suddenly appeared beside her. The shadow twisted twice and turned into a tall and strong figure. The figure walked towards Meng Qi and stretched out his hands. Give her to him, Yin Qingyan ordered faintly. Yes, Meng Qi certainly wouldn't disobey, and she also believed that Yun Qingyin wouldn't do anything to hurt the woman. She carefully handed the woman in black to the shadow, and the figure immediately walked forward with her steadily in his arms. The shadow seemed to walk without needing to walk, and it looked more stable. Qin Yanzhenjun. Meng Qi praised sincerely. You're so thoughtful. It's much more stable than me carrying her myself. The great desolate island wasn't big, so Meng Qi and Yun Qingyin soon returned to the manor where they rested last night. The figure directly carried the woman in black into Meng Qi's room and put her on the bed. Meng Qi quickly stepped forward to help. She supported the woman's head and gently placed it on the pillow so that the woman could lie more comfortably. When she turned around, the figure had already disappeared, and Yun Qingyin had also returned to his own room. Meng Qi didn't care. She reached out and pressed the woman's wrist. The 9 yang pills began to take effect, and the woman in black's pulse beat more vigorously than before. Meng Qi casually made a gesture and summoned a stream of clear water to wash her cheeks. She reached out and tucked the woman in black's hair behind her ears, revealing her face that was as beautiful as Xikong Xing's. The woman in black was probably injured, and then her spiritual sea was torn apart by the 5 spirits' primordial qi in the Starfall Sea. She then struggled to climb to the great desolate island. When Meng Qi carried her down from the mountain, there was a lot of fine dust on the woman's face. Now that she was clean, her deep facial features looked even more exquisite. Probably because of the effect of the pill, there was a touch of blood on her originally pale lips. Meng Qi pinched her chin and made her turn slightly to the side. She looked at the tattoo of a black flame behind her ear. The Devil World, the Great Devil Mansion, and the 33 Heavens of the Devil World. The Devil World's war concubine, the master of the Great Devil Mansion. These words that were originally very unfamiliar to her flashed through her mind one by one. Meng Qi let go and pulled the blanket over the woman. She also used a spell to clean the other party's clothes. This might make her more comfortable. She reached out and pressed on the other party's forehead. In addition to her spiritual seed being completely broken, the woman's internal injuries were also quite serious. There seemed to be many small wounds on her internal organs. Fortunately, the foundation of a perfected spirit-severing cultivator was strong enough. If it was an ordinary person, or even a foundation-building or qi-refining cultivator, they would probably have died from excessive blood loss. Meng Qi thought for a moment and took out the last 9 yang pills from her storage bag. She pinched open the woman's mouth and stuffed the 9 yang pills into her mouth. She also jumped onto the bed and sat cross-legged on the inside. Her hands flashed with light, and she pointed the 9 yang pills at the other party. Meng Qi persisted until her spiritual energy was used up. Then she retracted her hand and slowly opened her eyes. She exhaled and lowered her head to look at the woman. The woman who had been unconscious for a long time. Her fingers on her side moved slightly. She suddenly moaned in a low voice. Her thick and slightly curly eyelashes trembled slightly, and she slowly opened her eyes. Whether it was the 3,000 worlds or the demon realm, there was never a lack of beautiful women. Meng Qi could be considered to have seen a lot of beautiful women. When she saved this black-clothed woman earlier, she knew that the other party's facial features were exquisite and bright. She must be a beautiful woman. Unexpectedly, when the woman opened her eyes at this time, those eyes that were like the dew of morning petals still stunned Meng Qi. The black-clothed woman moaned softly again, and her eyes opened even wider. Her eyelashes were thick and slightly curly, and her facial features were deeper than the cultivators of the 3,000 worlds. At this time, she opened her eyes. Her eyes were clear, like a newborn elk, with a bit of ignorance and confusion, which made her even more lovable. You're awake. Meng Qi withdrew her gaze from the other party's face and reached out to press her wrist that was as white as jade. Her pulse was steadier and stronger than before. If it was a normal person, their life would be saved. But the other party was a cultivator after all. Losing her spiritual ocean, living was probably worse than death. You are? The black-clothed woman blinked, her gaze falling on Meng Qi's face. Her body moved, and she struggled to sit up, but her body had just moved, and she lay back on the bed powerlessly. "Who are you?" She took a deep breath, and her gaze swept the entire room. "Where am I? Don't you know?" Meng Qi rested his chin on one hand and looked at her. "Where you came from, where you're going. Don't you remember? Fallen Star Sea." The black-clothed woman struggled to sit up again. However, the feeling of weakness that she was completely unaccustomed to was still dominating her body. Her body had just moved, and she lay back on the bed helplessly. "This is the Fallen Star Sea." She seemed to be inexplicably shocked. I am. Your spiritual ocean was completely torn apart by the Fallen Star Sea." Meng Qi said, "What?" The black-clothed woman's face, which had finally regained some color, instantly turned pale. Even paler than before. "My spiritual ocean. In the end, she was a cultivator who was about to reach the great perfection of the spirit's severing stage, so she still had her composure. After a moment of panic, the black-clothed woman closed her eyes. In an instant, she opened her eyes again. Shock, panic, helplessness, and even faintly fear and despair appeared on her face at the same time. "My spiritual ocean." The woman looked at Meng Qi. Without any warning, tears suddenly fell from her eyes. Sparkling and translucent tears trickled down, instantly drenching his chest. "No, She reached out to desperately wipe her tears. "I shouldn't cry." "Why?" Meng Qi didn't understand. "Can't you cry when you're sad?" "Shouldn't cry." She took a deep breath and desperately wiped away the tears on her face, trying to stop herself from crying. The black-clothed woman closed her eyes again. When she opened them again, all of the panic, helplessness, and fear from before had disappeared from her face. She took a deep breath, supported herself on the bed, and gritted her teeth to try to sit up. Meng Qi hurriedly reached out to help her. "Many thanks, Mississippi," she nodded towards Meng Qi. When she had just woken up, her spiritual ocean had been completely shattered, her Ling energy was gone, and her inner core was dim. The black-clothed woman had instantly lost her composure, but now she had clearly calmed down. "You're welcome." Meng Qi helped her sit up. She also sat cross-legged on the bed. After entering Jindan, even though her Ling energy had been used up, there would be an endless flow of Ling energy coming out of the inner core, and the dried-up spiritual ocean would slowly start to have new Ling energy. However, the speed was still too slow. Meng Qi had already stuffed a northern dark pill into his mouth. If the black-clothed woman's spiritual ocean hadn't been completely shattered, with her cultivation, she shouldn't have been in such a sorry state. "Miss, did you save me?" The black-clothed woman barely managed to sit up. She looked up at Meng Qi. In the blink of an eye, even the blankness and helplessness in her eyes disappeared. The black-clothed woman's expression also became calm. She looked coldly at Meng Qi. "I saw you at the Fallen Star Seaside," Meng Qi said. "You seem to have been injured before you fell here. You were unconscious at the time and collapsed by the seaside." "Yes." The woman nodded. "I was chased by the enemy and was already injured before I fell here." She paused. Even though she was weak and could barely sit up, she still nodded towards Meng Qi. "Thank you for saving my life, Mississippi. In the future, I will definitely." The black-clothed woman was suddenly speechless. Her spiritual ocean was damaged, but the elegant and beautiful girl in front of her could come and go freely in a dangerous place like the Fallen Star Sea. She even saved her so easily. It seemed a bit shameless for her to say that she would definitely repay her in the future. Meng Qi tilted his head slightly and looked at the black-clothed woman. The black-clothed woman closed her eyes again. "My spiritual ocean has been destroyed. I'm afraid I can't repay Mrs. Kindness in this life. I can only repay you for saving my life." Chongxiang Chinese Network, are you a battle concubine of the Great Devil Residence's G family? Meng Qi asked. "You." A strange light flashed through the black-clothed woman's eyes. How did you? She suddenly closed her mouth and didn't continue. Obviously, she didn't want to expose her secret. Can't you say it? Meng Qi didn't force her. She was just curious about the Devil Realm. She was also curious about the great Devil Residence's master who had a good relationship with the 3,000 worlds and the Demon Realm. She didn't have the habit of forcing people to do things they didn't want to do after saving them. Then what's your name? Can you tell me? Meng Qi smiled at her and explained, because you may be staying here for a long time. It's easier to call you by a name. Stay here for a long time? The woman stared blankly at Meng Qi. But it's not easy to repair your spiritual sea. Meng Qi said, with my current ability, I can't do it for the time being. Repair spiritual sea? The black-clothed woman repeated Meng Qi's words in a daze. She knew every single word, but why was it so difficult to understand when they were put together? The black-clothed woman suddenly raised her head and stared at Meng Qi in disbelief. Spiritual sea can be repaired? Her voice was slightly hoarse. Because of her excitement, her voice was so dry that she couldn't speak. But my spiritual sea has already shattered into pieces. There's no spiritual energy left, and my inner core is obscure. I can't guarantee it, but I can try, Meng Qi said. Thank you, miss. The black-clothed woman's lips trembled slightly, and her eyes became slightly hot. She had a firm mind and had experienced countless storms. Even if a mountain collapsed in front of her, her expression wouldn't change. But now that she had lost all her spiritual energy, her mind was no longer as steady. Although she knew that hope was slim, she still saw a glimmer of hope in the darkness. Even if it was just a glimmer of hope, she had to desperately grasp it. My name is Yi Wu. The black-clothed woman Yi Wu said, I haven't asked for Mrs. Name. Meng Qi said. She got off the bed and said, I'll do my best. You can stay here for now. Miss Meng Qi, Yi Wu asked, where is this? I can only tell you that we're still in the Starfall Sea, Meng Qi said. I'll call you Yi Wu, and you can call me Meng Qi. There's no need to be so polite. Okay, Meng Qi. Yi Wu complied. Meng Qi's heart skipped a beat. Did she forget something, huh? She remembered now. She still had to go to heaven beyond heaven. Previously, she had promised Xikong Xing and the others that no matter what happened, she would meet them at heaven beyond heaven tower today. Meng Qi hurriedly looked left and right. Yi Wu was so badly injured that he definitely couldn't let her go out. Rest well, Meng Qi said to her. I have something to do. After she finished speaking, she hurriedly turned around and walked out of the room. After Meng Qi and Yun Qingyan brought Yi Wu back, he went back to his room. There were other rooms in the manor, but Yun Qingyan didn't say that she could use them, so Meng Qi didn't dare to barge in. She thought for a moment, then knocked on the door across from hers. As soon as he knocked on the door opened without any wind blowing. Come in? Yun Qingyan's voice came from inside the room. Meng Qi hurriedly went in. The white-robed man was sitting on the bed with one hand pointing to the sky and the other pointing to the ground. Faint starlight flowed from heaven and earth into his body, making him look extremely mysterious. Meng Qi. Yun Qingyan opened his eyes. The starlight didn't stop, and it seemed like there were stars twinkling in his eyes. The Big Dipper's shadow floated up and down. Is he cultivating? Meng Qi stared at him in a daze. What's the matter? Yun Qingyan slowly closed his eyes and asked again. Qingyan Zhenjun. Meng Qi hurriedly closed the door and said, Yi Wu, the injured Demon Realm battleship is resting in my room. Can I use another room? She didn't hide it from Yun Qingyan and said directly, I want to go to outer heaven. Oh. Yun Qingyan opened his eyes slightly. Right here. Meng Qi. Okay. She chose the spot furthest away from Yun Qingyan and took out the jade slip for outer heaven. Although it was unlikely that Yun Qingyan would encounter any problems here, and she might not be able to help much, it was good that she wasn't noisy and was closer to him. Meng Qi held the jade slip and slowly closed her eyes. Light flashed before her eyes, and and she was already standing outside Outer Heaven City. In the room, Yun Qinyin snorted coldly, and the starlight around him dissipated. He got up and slowly walked to Meng Qi's side. Going to Outer Heaven again? Why was he in such a hurry? Who was he going to see? Chu Tianfeng? Qin Xiuma? Chapter 104. Meng Qi did not go directly to Heaven's Beyond Heaven Tower. She had another purpose for going there. Refining the 5-spirit cauldron required 5 kinds of natural treasures. Apart from nether iron and Brahma sand, which could be found in the Starfall Sea, the remaining blazing feather, chaos vine, and sky dragon crystal were all rare items that could only be found in the demon realm or the devil realm. Meng Qi had once bought the blazing feather at the Heaven-class auction house in Heaven's Beyond Heaven. Therefore, she planned to try her luck first to see if she could buy these 3 things here. The teleportation formation instantly sent her to the floating island of the Heaven-class auction house. The auction here was sometimes only held once a month. When there were special and extremely rare items, another auction would be held. At this time, the floating island was quiet. Meng Qi walked all the way to the auction house, but she did not meet a single cultivator. Outside the auction house, it was also empty. Only a staff member of the Heaven-class auction house was guarding there. When the staff member saw Meng Qi, he was obviously stunned, but he quickly greeted her with a smile. "Fellow Taoist, is there something you need?" "Yes." Meng Qi nodded. "Fellow Taoist, when will the Heaven-class auction house be next? Can you know in advance if there is something I need in the auction?" "This," the staff member muttered and looked at her up and down again. Meng Qi looked very young. She was dressed in a green robe, and her figure was slender and even slightly thin. Her elegant little face made her look like she was only 17 or 18 years old. She looked exactly like a young girl. However, since she could walk here without anyone stopping her, her identity was definitely not ordinary. The staff member quickly smiled at Meng Qi again. "Of course." As he spoke, he took out a bamboo slip and said, "Fellow Taoist, you might as well leave your things here. If the 3 auction houses have items for auction, they will inform you." "Okay." Meng Qi took the bamboo slip and left the blazing feather, sky dragon crystal, and chaos vine behind. She thought for a moment and wrote down the spirit-devouring grass and nightless fruit needed to refine the starlight on the bamboo slip. Meng Qi returned the bamboo slip to the staff member and smiled. "Thank you, fellow Taoist." "No problem." The staff member smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist, do you know? This requires a certain amount of spiritual points." Meng Qi really did not know. Xue Jinwen had told her that there were many uses for spiritual points, but she did not expect them to be so useful. Meng Qi felt a little regretful. If she had known that she could use spiritual points to do such a thing, she would have come earlier. "It's like this," the man explained. "Each item costs 5 spirit points. If there is really an item to be auctioned, or if the realm beyond heaven has this item for sale, we will inform you. Whether you need it or not, you will have to pay an additional 3 spirit points." Meng Qi, "Is that so?" "Yes." That person smiled faintly. Usually, only when the sect urgently needs something would people use this method to make an appointment. He paused for a moment and said, "Fellow Taoist, you might as well leave behind the things you urgently need. If the rest of the rank 5 are not in a hurry, there is no harm in waiting slowly. The day before the major auctions, the list of auction items will be made public to inform those who are qualified to participate in the auction." The man saw that Meng Qi had left a total of 5 items, which would cost 25 spirit points. She was young. Even if she was qualified to enter the Heaven-class auction house, it was most likely because she came from a large sect and was an elite disciple that the sect focused on cultivating. In many sects, only the sect master or elders were qualified to use spiritual points. Individuals had very few of them. Thank you for your guidance. Meng Qi saluted him. Then what is it that fellow Taoist needs urgently? That person asked politely. Let's record all 5 items, Meng Qi said. As she spoke, she reached out and clasped the bamboo slip, leaving her divine sense mark. A white light flashed on the bamboo slip, and the cultivator of the heaven-class auction house raised his eyebrows. This time he was really surprised. It was not a big deal to be qualified to enter the heaven-class auction house, but the girl in front of him actually had so many spirit points to pay, and she looked like she did not care. This was really surprising. The cultivator could not help but look up and size up Meng Qi again. Green robe, black hair, elegant face, and clear eyes, looking very comfortable. Thank you for your hard work, Dao friend. Meng Qi smiled at him again. She turned and walked towards the teleportation array, and went straight from there to the Heavens Beyond Heaven building. The welcoming cultivator of the Heavens Beyond Heaven building still had an impression of her, and politely led her to the box they had used before. Meng Qi was the first to arrive. Before she could order anything to eat, someone had already served her tea and snacks. The pink plum blossom-shaped pastries looked very delicate and cute. In addition, there were 3 plates of candies of different shapes and 2 fresh and juicy spirit fruits. The waiter brought tea and snacks and quickly left the box and considerately closed the box door for her. Meng Qi waited for a while, and 3 knocks came from the box door. Then the door opened, and Sikong Xing rushed in first. Meng Qi. She jumped to Meng Qi's side and immediately grabbed her shoulder to size her up for a while. After confirming that her good friend was intact and not even a strand of hair was missing. Sikong Xing then let go of her hand and sat down. She did not stand on ceremony. She first stuffed a plum blossom cake in her mouth and swallowed it quickly, and then said, I thought of a way to ask my father to find out. Just a month and a half ago, the 3 entrances of the demon realm's fallen star sea were guarded by the heavenly demon royal family's elite subordinates. Meng Qi asked, what happened? Because of the demon lord token. When Sikong Xing said this, she knew that no one in the Heavens Beyond Heaven building's box could eavesdrop on her, but she still lowered her voice and said softly, the demon lord token is about to reappear. She paused and lowered her voice even more. 3 months ago, there were rumors in the demon realm that the demon lord was seriously injured and fell into the fallen star sea. No one knows if he is dead or alive, and most likely he has already died in the fallen star sea. Therefore, the demon lord token will reappear in the fallen star sea. In addition, the demon lord's personal guards are surrounded in the 7th heaven and have been unable to break out. At first, there were many people who did not believe such a strange rumor, but slowly, the rumors became more and more intense. Not only the demon lord, but even his subordinates rarely appear in the demon realm. Slowly, everyone began to doubt it. Sikong Xing looked at Meng Qi's puzzled face and quickly explained, our demon realm is not so united and obedient. Although the demon lord token is held by the demon lord token, the demon lord token is only useful when the survival of the demon realm is threatened, or when there is a major event that concerns the relationship between the 3 realms. Usually, it can't command the entire demon realm. Meng Qi nodded thoughtfully. It's just that the current demon lord is perfected Lord White Tiger of the heavenly demon White Tiger clan. Meng Qi's heart skipped a beat. She had always been careful. In fact, from the previous clues, she had more or less guessed Yun Qingyin's identity. But when she really heard the words perfected Lord White Tiger, her cheeks still blushed and her face became hot. Meng Qi. Sikong Xing was puzzled. Why are you blushing? No, nothing. Meng Qi quickly shook his head. It's a little stuffy here. Sikong Xing looked around. Was it stuffy? She didn't think so, but she was straightforward and didn't take it to heart. She continued, he's really powerful. 10 years ago, the demon lord token was also snatched by him because he was strong enough to look down on the entire demon realm. Sikong Xing suddenly asked, by the way, Meng Qi, you know the demon lord, right? Huh? Meng Qi was stunned. I've never been to the demon realm. But you know the 4 extreme arrays, and can even activate the killing array. Xikong Xing suddenly shuddered when she said this. She couldn't help but think that Meng Qi was like the god of death that day. The green-robed girl's slender hands were like a king looking down on the world. Yes, Meng Qi answered vaguely. He didn't want to lie to Xikong Xing. This matter was related to Yun Qingyan. If he didn't take the initiative to say it, Meng Qi would never reveal his secret. Xikong Xing's shoulders trembled a few times before she continued. That's not a member of the heavenly demon White Tiger clan. No. She shook her head and said, as far as I know, only perfected Lord White Tiger can use that array. Meng Qi. She really didn't know anything. Xikong Xing continued. Your Excellency's whereabouts are unknown, and you haven't appeared for several months. Those royal heavenly demons who have ambitions for the position of demon monarch have become bolder. Not only have they surrounded your Excellency's personal guards in the 7th heaven, but they have also blocked all the entrances to the fallen star sea from the demon realm. So Meng Qi. She grabbed Meng Qi's hand. I've asked Father. He said that it's harder than ascending to heaven to enter or leave the fallen star sea from the demon realm now, because it requires the consent of the other 3 royal heavenly demon clan leaders besides the White Tiger clan. I understand. Meng Qi nodded. She was actually not in a hurry to leave the fallen star sea now, but Xikong Xing had gone to great lengths for her and even told her these secrets of the demon realm. Meng Qi was still very grateful. Thank you, Xing. But now Before she finished speaking, the door of the private room opened again. This time, Su Junmo, Chu Tianfeng, and the others walked in together. Xue Jinwen was the last to walk. When she saw Meng Qi, she nodded slightly at her and smiled reassuringly. Meng Qi. Su Junmo sat down in front of Meng Qi with a serious expression. We've decided to form an elite team and break into the Fallen Star Sea from the Western Realm's entrance. Huh? Before Meng Qi could say anything, Xikong Xing's eyes lit up. When? I want to join too. She hadn't been with Su Junmo for 2 days, so she didn't know about this. Tomorrow morning, Su Junmo said, in addition to me and Chu Qin, Xue Qingxian from the Xue family will also join. In addition, the junior brother of the Fallen Star Pavilion's first sword master under Pavilion Master Pei will also join us. The Xue family will also come forward to contact the 10 major sword and spell cultivation sects in the Western Realm. It's estimated that a team of about 20 people will enter the Fallen Star Sea in the end. As he spoke, he spread out a piece of white paper and quickly drew a map of the Fallen Star Sea that they knew. Meng Qi, if the place you're at is safe, stay there and don't move. We'll find you and bring you out. But don't worry, Su Junmo said. I still have a group of elite subordinates that can be mobilized. They'll come to our rescue. Yuenba. Net but Meng Qi. The black-clothed youth, Chu Tianfeng, sat down beside Meng Qi and anxiously interrupted her. Don't say buts and buts. Don't worry. You just have to stay where you are. We'll find you and bring you out. Meng Qi. Qin Xiuma, who didn't talk much these few times, slightly raised his chin at her. Don't run around and don't randomly pick up people. The Fallen Star Sea is extremely dangerous. You're a Jindan stage cultivator. You should save your own life first. Yes. Chu Tianfeng raised his head and looked at Qin Xiuma. Both of them saw a touch of worry in each other's eyes. He turned his head and warned Meng Qi with a rare, serious face. Qin Xiuma is right. That's the Fallen Star Sea. You have to live well. Your own life is more important than anything else. But Meng Qi. Xue Jinwen smiled slightly. Don't worry. This time, the Xue family will provide a large number of pills. In addition to my eldest brother, there will also be 2 elders at the great perfection of the 6th grade medical skill participating. She walked to Meng Qi's side and bent down to press her shoulder. My cultivation and medical skills are far inferior to my eldest brother's. I can't go with him to pick you up, but I believe that my eldest brother will risk his life to take you out of the fallen star sea. Meng Qi was stunned. Right? Shui Jinwen smiled and said, my eldest brother said that his blood moon is with you. This blood moon is a protective magic weapon of the Shui family. He has worn it since he was a child, and it has already cultivated a trace of spiritual sense, so it can communicate with its owner's mind. She said, Meng Qi, wear it on your body and send a small amount of spiritual aura into it. My eldest brother will find you. Fellow Taoist Shui, you don't need to— Okay. Su Junmo waved his hand. Meng Qi, remember two things now. First, wear the blood moon on your body at all times. Second, protect yourself. Don't run around. Just stay in the safe place you are now. Meng Qi. She was helpless. Since they entered the door, she had been interrupted constantly. Until now, she hadn't been able to say a complete sentence. Su Junmo. Meng Qi took a deep breath and said, I have something to say. Go ahead. Su Junmo raised his chin at her. Hurry up. We still have to make some preparations. Meng Qi pursed her lips. Su Junmo, I don't plan to leave the fallen star sea now. Don't come. Su Junmo was stunned. He turned his head and hurriedly looked at Shui Jinwen and Qin Xiaoma. Meng Qi continued, the fallen star sea is actually not as dangerous as we thought. I'm fine now. I'm safe. There are also some heavenly materials and earthly treasures that are very useful to me. I don't plan to leave for the time being. Su Junmo. He turned his head to look at Chu Tianfeng and the others. Then, he turned to Meng Qi and said, Meng Qi, you don't have to worry about us. We won't act recklessly. Naturally, we will be fully prepared before entering the fallen star sea. I'm really fine. I'm safe. Meng Qi regretted it very much. Yesterday, it was also because she said that she wanted to leave the fallen star sea that these friends made such a decision. Meng Qi stood up and bowed to everyone. Yesterday, I didn't know the situation in the fallen star sea, so I was in a hurry to leave. Now, the place I'm at is really safe. You don't have to worry about me. You don't have to risk entering the fallen star sea for me. When I find what I need, I will naturally leave. Su Junmo looked deeply at Meng Qi and didn't say anything. Shui Jinwen sighed softly and lowered her eyes slightly. It seemed that she couldn't bear to see the anxious look on Meng Qi's face. Chu Tianfeng and Qin Xiaoma looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Meng Qi, Su Junmo said in a deep voice, I know you're worried that it will be too risky for us to enter the fallen star sea, but please rest assured that we will all be fine. No. Meng Qi also felt helpless. She couldn't say anything about Yun Qingyan. It would make her explanation seem so weak. I'm really fine now. I'm very safe. Meng Qi took a deep breath and calmed herself down. The fallen star sea is really not as dangerous as the rumors say. Isn't it the best proof that I can still live until now? Meng Qi, Qin Xiaoma suddenly said. What are you looking for in there? Meng Qi remembered Ji Wuzhong's words. She couldn't say anything about the five-spirit cauldron. She didn't suspect that these people in the room would betray her, but for such a thing, the fewer people who knew, the better. Not letting them know was actually protecting them. If she couldn't say what she needed to refine the five-spirit cauldron, then the five-spirit flower and the nightless fruit, Meng Qi said. These were the things needed to refine the starlight, and they were also unique to the fallen star sea. She could say these two things. The five-spirit flower? The nightless fruit? Chu Tianfeng muttered and repeated in confusion. The five-spirit flower. Shui Jinwen quickly recalled in her mind. The nightless fruit? The nightless fruit. Su Junmo suddenly widened his eyes. Meng Qi, you want to refine the starlight. Starlight? Shui Jinwen was from the Shui family of the Wind Alliance, so she instantly reacted. You want to— She blinked in disbelief. You want to refine the starlight? Yes. You want to save Ji Wuzhong? That day, Meng Qi and Ji Wuzhong were both sent into the barrier of the competition, but Lu Qingran stayed in Fallen Star City. The Wind Alliance quickly found her. They did not make things difficult for Lu Qingran and only asked about Ji Wuzhong's situation from her. The Wind Alliance was the top medical cultivation sect in the Trichiliocosm. Meng Qi could guess that Ji Wuzhong's spiritual ocean was injured from his fluctuating strength and his inability to control the spirit energy leaking out. The family masters of the four major families of the Wind Alliance also quickly guessed Ji Wuzhong's situation from Lu Qingran's description. Xueqing also asserted that Ji Wuzhong's spiritual ocean should have a crack. To repair the spiritual ocean, only starlight could be used. In addition, the legendary five-spirit origin energy could also do it. Starlight was something that only existed in the demon realm and was produced in very small quantities. Stardust alone was extremely rare, not to mention the five-spirit flower and the nightless fruit, which could only be found in the fallen star sea. The five-spirit origin energy only existed in legends. Even the elders of the Wind Alliance had never seen it before. That was why Ji Wuzhong had escaped the boundary of the competition and then escaped the apricot forest with his ingenious and powerful formation. The Wind Alliance was not in a hurry. After all, a Xiuzha whose spiritual ocean was injured and could not be healed in a short period of time was not much of a threat to them. Xue Jinwen also knew about this matter, so when Meng Qi said that he wanted to find these two spirit herbs, she immediately guessed it. Meng Qi. Chu Tianfeng's brow furrowed tightly. That Ji Wuzhong's actions are evil and extreme. Everything he does is strange. He doesn't seem like a gentleman. Don't get too close to him. Meng Qi. She really hadn't thought that they would associate him with Ji Wuzhong. Even she had not thought of him for the time being. Speaking of which, she did not know how Ji Wuzhong was now. She had fallen into the fallen star sea. But what about Ji Wuzhong, who had been with her in the Sea of Stars that day? Was he all right? Meng Qi. Su Junmo stood up. All right, you don't have to say anything else. His expression was solemn. Everyone has already decided on this matter. You don't have to lie to us and say that you are fine just because you are worried about us. We will definitely bring you out of the fallen star sea. When Su Junmo said this, everyone looked at Meng Qi and nodded at her. Meng Qi. Xing said, Meng Qi, we are friends. If it were me in the fallen star sea, would you not care about me and not come to find me? Meng Qi, of course you would not care about Xing. But the situation was different now. That's it. Xing's eyes were shining. You will come, so we will also go. Meng Qi smiled bitterly. The fallen star sea was a dangerous place. If she said that she was fine, these people would not believe her at all, unless she brought up Yin Qing Yin. But would they believe her? Now let me talk about the second thing. Meng Qi was helpless. Sister Xue, the blood moon that your brother gave me is gone. She had fed it to the goshawk that Yin Qing Yin summoned during the competition. Xue Jinwen smiled sweetly and shook her head gently. Meng Qi, even if we have to find a needle in a haystack, we will find a way to find you. The blood moon is gone. This will not change our minds. But my brother knows. She did not continue and just shook her head again. Forget it. Let's not talk about him for now. Meng Qi. But without the blood moon, it will be very difficult for you to find me. The fallen star sea is so dangerous. Everyone in the box had a smile on their faces. Even Qin Xiaoma, who had always been as cold as an iceberg, raised his eyebrows and looked at Meng Qi. Okay. Su Junmo waved his hand again. We should go. Meng Qi, protect yourself and wait for us. Meng Qi. Xing spread her arms and hugged Meng Qi tightly. Wait for us. Meng Qi. Xue Jinwen reached out and tidied her hair. You must stay alive. As long as there is a chance. Even if you have to protect your last breath, don't give up your spiritual sense. Meng Qi. Qin Xiaoma finally said, your life is more important than others. So don't pick up others. Only Chu Tianfeng did not say anything. The young man in black looked determined. He took a deep look at Meng Qi, turned around, and left the private room with the others. Meng Qi was stunned as she watched the door of the private room open and close. She felt that her reputation was not bad. She never lied and had always been honest with others. Why did these people? Meng Qi's nose suddenly twitched and her eyes became hot. She actually knew why. Because these people really treated her as a friend. Therefore, none of these people were above the spirit's severing stage, but they all dared to enter the fallen star sea, where all those below the spirit's severing stage who enter will die. She couldn't really watch them die. Meng Qi suddenly jumped up and rushed out of the private room. She was going to ask Yun Qingyan, because if she couldn't mention him, then she couldn't make them believe her. But without Yun Qingyan's permission, she couldn't tell others about him. Sister Shui, Su Junmo, and the others hadn't gone far. Meng Qi chased after them and called out, "Wait for me for another hour." "No, half an hour," she said to them. "I'll be back soon." After Meng Qi finished speaking, she ran out of the heavens beyond building. Su Junmo and the rest looked at her back view as she ran away, stunned. She was a little hesitant. "Wait for Meng Qi." Si Xing was the most decisive. "I believe that she won't lie to us." "Okay." Su Junmo nodded. "We'll wait for her for half an hour. If she doesn't come back, we'll act according to the plan." Qing Yan's and Jun. Meng Qi immediately opened her eyes as soon as she stepped into the teleportation array to leave. She was originally in Yun Qingyan's room. She stood up and looked at the place where Yun Qingyan had been sitting cross-legged to cultivate. On the carved bed, the white-robed young man who had been sitting there just now was still sitting there. Hearing Meng Qi's voice, he suddenly opened his eyes. Chapter 105. Qing Yanzhenjun? Meng Qi's footsteps paused, and her expression became serious. When Yun Qingyan was in his true form, his eyes were blue. When the white-robed man was in his true form, his eyes were no different from ordinary people's. They were dark brown, but deeper and brighter. At this time, his eyes were strangely red, as if they were dyed red with blood. They looked particularly strange. Yun Qingyan looked at Meng Qi with such a pair of eyes. His face was expressionless, and his eyes were colder than his expression. It was as if he had no human feelings, leaving only emptiness and sharpness. Qing Yanzhenjun. Meng Qi's mind instantly flashed with countless books she had read. She took 2 steps forward, and her breathing suddenly stopped. A huge resistance came from the front, making it difficult for her to even take a step forward. Meng Qi looked up and looked around in surprise. The room was silent, and a light veil hung from the roof and fell quietly to the ground. What was it? She stared ahead. What was this thing that made it difficult for her to breathe? Meng Qi held his breath and condensed his qi. He slowly took another step forward. Her fingertips on her hands, hanging by her sides, flashed slightly. Her right hand gently brushed the storage bag, and a silver medicine knife was already in her hand. Yun Qingyan's gaze finally changed a little. His eyes moved slightly, and he looked at Meng Qi's hand hanging by her side and the silver medicine knife. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, but that smile was more like a condescending expert mocking Meng Qi for overestimating herself. Ugh! Meng Qi frowned slightly. When she took that step, she felt as if she had stepped into a huge whirlpool. She couldn't see anything around her, but her body was desperately being torn in all directions. In addition, there was a huge pressure desperately squeezing her, and the force was so strong that it seemed to crush her. Qing! Meng Qi opened her mouth and only said one word. She felt that she had said the rest of the words, but she didn't even hear herself. She opened her mouth again, but no matter what she said, her voice seemed to be swallowed. Meng Qi's expression froze. Could this be? Yun Qingyan's left hand was still pointing to the sky, while her right hand was pointing to the ground. The veil beside the bed didn't move at all, but his sleeves were slowly moving. Was it the 5 spirits Yuan Qi? Meng Qi immediately realized that it was the 5 spirits origin Qi in the Starfall Sea. Was Yun Qingyan using the 5 spirits Yuan Qi in the Starfall Sea to heal herself? She stared at the white-robed man in a daze. His clothes seemed to be slowly moved by something tangible. Mengqi suddenly remembered that when she first picked up the injured little white tiger, she didn't sense the existence of a spirit ocean in its body. Where the spirit ocean should have been, there was only a pitch-black void. The pitch-black void seemed to be able to swallow everything. There was no spiritual energy or inner core. Mengqi had once treated Su Junmo's injuries. She had seen the spirit sea of the Yao cultivators. In fact, it was not much different from that of the cultivators in the Trichiliocosm. The inner cores of Yao cultivators were slightly different from the inner cores of cultivators, but their spirit seas were not much different. At that time, she didn't think that little white tiger's spirit sea was completely damaged. She thought that it was a young sky demon white tiger. Even if it was a royal, its spirit sea might not have formed yet. In addition, little white tiger was so seriously injured. There was even a barrier injury in its body. Mengqi now recalled everything that happened that day. Could it be that Yun Qingyan was like Yi Wu, seriously injured to the point that his spirit sea was completely destroyed? But he appeared occasionally and was clearly so powerful. Mengqi's mind was a little chaotic. For a moment, all kinds of thoughts came one after another. She looked up at the white-robed man in front of her. The other party's eyes were even redder. Yun Qingyan was very good-looking. Even among the countless beauties in the three realms, he was definitely the most outstanding one. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was a peerless beauty. At this moment, his eyes were blood-red and his gaze was cold. He looked strange. Compared to the usual calm, white-robed man, he was more mysterious and evil. He actually looked even more attractive. Mengqi only looked at him for a moment. She felt a little nervous, and her heart also started to beat faster. It was as if those blood-red eyes could really suck away a person's soul. Mengqi hurriedly turned her head away. She didn't dare to continue staring at Yun Qingyan. She calmed down a little. It seemed that the other party was fine and was just using the 5 spirit essence energy to heal his injuries. Mengqi heaved a sigh of relief and slowly took 2 steps back. She was still holding the medicine knife and looking at the door. At this moment, there was still the demon world battle concubine Yi Wu on the great desolate island. Yun Qingyan should have reached a more critical moment. It was always right to be careful. Mengqi thought for a moment and simply walked to the door. She held the medicine knife and directly carved a Dharma array on the door. She casually took out a few spirit stones and inserted them into the array. Then, she turned around and sat back on the chair. She stared at Yun Qingyan for a while. Even though the blood red in his eyes seemed to be thicker, he still looked calm. Mengqi kept a few more ling stones in her hand in case she needed them. At this time, she definitely couldn't disturb Yun Qingyan. She even regretted her rashness just now. Mengqi simply took out the bamboo slip that recorded the forging method of the 5-spirit cauldron and surrounded the bamboo slip with ling energy. A moment later, a white light flashed in her hand, and the bamboo slip disappeared. Xiuzhe usually called the initial forging of a soul-tethered talisman the foundation of a talisman. At this time, there was no need for treasures. In the spiritual sea, the Xiuzhe used their spiritual sense and familiar control of ling energy to carve out the initial shape of a talisman. Some Xiuzhe, who were called geniuses, were born with stronger control of ling energy. Even if they used the same spells, their cultivation speed would be faster than other people's. Moreover, many genius Xiuzhe who were in the late stage of Zhuji would have extra strength to start forging their own soul-tethered talisman. For example, Pei Mufeng, Qin Xiuma, and Xue Qingxian of the Xue family. The soul-tethered talisman could be connected to the Xiuzhe's heart. In the end, the Xiuzhe could even cultivate a spiritual sense to live in it. That was the spirit that people often talked about. Pei Mufeng was able to cultivate a sword spirit when he was in the Yuanying stage. He was extremely talented. The people of Falling Star Pavilion were willing to worship him as the pavilion master, not because he was invincible in the sect now, but because the elders had high hopes for him and hoped that he could lead Falling Star Pavilion to the peak. Meng Qi didn't know if Xueqing Xian had also cultivated a spirit for his soul-tethered talisman. At least Chu Tianfeng and Qin Shima shouldn't have it now. However, this was something that she would have to consider in the future. Meng Qi's spiritual sense probed into her spiritual sea. The pure white inner core floated above the spiritual sea. Wisps of spiritual aura wrapped around the inner core, which looked lively and lively. Next to the inner core was the scroll that Lin Yin gave her. It was also wrapped in wisps of spiritual aura, which complemented the inner core. At this time, there was another bamboo slip above Meng Qi's spiritual sea. The bamboo slip was warm and smooth. It was the bamboo slip that recorded the refining method of the 5-spirit cauldron that she was holding in her palm just now. Meng Qi's mind moved slightly. After the core formation stage, her control of spiritual sense and spiritual aura was far better than that of the Zhuji stage. She extracted a wisp of spiritual aura from her spiritual sea and wrapped the bamboo slip around the 5-spirit cauldron. The spiritual aura wrapped around the bamboo slip like silk threads. Slowly, like a layer of cocoon, the entire bamboo slip was wrapped inside. There was also a clear light flowing out of the bamboo slip, which in turn illuminated Meng Qi's spiritual sea. She carefully extracted another wisp of spiritual aura from her spiritual sea and wrapped it around the bamboo slip as well. A moment later, another wisp of spiritual aura appeared. Meng Qi patiently separated a total of 48 wisps of spiritual aura from her spiritual sea and wrapped them around the bamboo slip little by little. The bamboo slip had long been wrapped in layers of spiritual aura, but the clear light it emitted could still pour out through the thick cocoon of spiritual aura. As the clear light scattered, the spiritual aura wrapped around the bamboo slip seemed to no longer be controlled by Meng Qi. Instead, it began to be controlled by the clear light of the bamboo slip and began to spin rapidly. Meng Qi held her breath and extracted the last wisp of spiritual aura from her spiritual sea, wrapping it around the glowing ball of spiritual aura that was getting bigger and bigger. With a soft pop sound, the glowing ball of spiritual aura suddenly jumped twice. Then the shape of the originally round, glowing ball began to change. At the bottom of the glowing ball, 3 small bumps slowly grew out. At first, the bumps were just small bulges, but slowly they grew a little longer. At the same time, the upper half of the glowing ball began to gradually flatten and gradually concave. The entire glowing ball began to transform into the shape of a small cauldron. This process would be very slow and would take about 24 hours. However, Meng Qi was not in a hurry. She exhaled. In fact, the first step was to build the foundation of the natal magic treasure. The first step was not difficult. As long as she could get the bamboo slip or jade slip that recorded the method of refining the natal magic treasure, she would have already succeeded in half. The difficult part was to find the necessary heavenly materials and earthly treasures, and then further refine the magic treasures so that they would have different characteristics. For example, this 5-spirit cauldron was not very different from other natal medicine refining cauldrons when it first built its foundation. If Meng Qi could not find the 5 elements materials needed to refine the 5-spirit cauldron, such as fire feather, chaos vine, and nether iron, then the 5-spirit cauldron would not be a 5-spirit cauldron. At most, it would just be a small natal medicine refining cauldron. There was nothing magical about it. But now, Meng Qi stroked her storage bag. She already had the nether iron. She was at least 1/5 of the way to the completion of the 5-spirit cauldron. The corners of her lips curled up slightly. She turned to look at Yin Qingyan, who was still sitting quietly on the bed. This was all thanks to Qingyan's Hinjun. However, she did not know when he would be done today. Su Junmo, Sister Shui, and the others were still waiting for her. Meng Qi looked at the time. The time for an incense stick to burn had already passed, but Yin Qingyan still had no intention of stopping. How about She took out the jade slip of the sky beyond heaven and prepared to tell her friends not to wait for her today. They did not have to set off to the starfall sea immediately tomorrow. She could ask them to wait for her for another day. After she asked Yun Qingyan if she could tell them something about the situation in the Starfall Sea, they would give up on the idea of coming to the Starfall Sea. As for how she would get out in the future, Meng Qi glanced at Yun Qingyan again. If Qin Yanzhenjun wanted to stay here for a long time, she could also stay and follow him. Meng Qi made up her mind. She reached out and held the jade slip of the sky beyond heaven tightly. Before she could send her spiritual energy into the jade slip, a huge force suddenly pounced on her with the force of toppling mountains and overturning seas. Meng Qi was caught off guard. Her whole body fell backward. The jade slip in her hand also left her hand. It drew a slanted trajectory in the air and landed on the ground beside her. Meng Qi did not have time to care about the jade slip. She pushed off the ground with her hand and jumped up. Before she could stand up straight, another huge gust of wind rushed toward her. This time, the wind carried tiny water droplets. The water droplets were crystal clear and looked exceptionally cute. However, Meng Qi knew that if she was hit by these cute little water droplets, her body might be directly penetrated. She suddenly leaned back, narrowly avoiding some of the small and exquisite water droplets. Qin Yanzhenjun. This was the first thought that flashed through her mind. Did something happen? Meng Qi did not care about her embarrassment. She rolled on the ground and then jumped up again. The room, which was still quiet just now seemed to have just experienced a catastrophe. The light gauze hanging from the roof had completely disappeared. Even the carved bed had disappeared. Yun Qingyan was still sitting cross-legged, but his whole body was floating in the air. There was no wind in the room, but his sleeves were fluttering. The hem of his robe was raised and made a chi-chi sound, like the sound of a sharp knife cutting through the air. As if he felt Meng Qi's gaze, Yun Qingyan suddenly opened his eyes and looked at her. The blood in his eyes was thicker. They were as cold as ice and frost. He was like a demon, extremely strange and charming. Beside him, a transparent and formless red flame suddenly ignited. After a short while, black water poured out and extinguished the flames. Then, Yun Qingyan was enveloped in the water. The water was transparent. Meng Qi could see his clothes rolling in the water. In the blink of an eye, the huge rock suppressed the black water and fell from the sky. The dark gray rock was still transparent. It looked terrifying, but it did not even break a single hair on Yun Qingyan's head. In the blink of an eye, countless young saplings grew out of the rock. The rock fell apart and turned into countless fragments, completely dissipating. The transparent flame swept over again and burned the saplings. Meng Qi took a deep breath and barely suppressed the shock in her heart. She could guess that these strange phenomena should be the manifestation of the five spirits' vitality that Yun Qingyan used to heal his injuries. But why was it like this? Although she had never tried to use the five spirits' vitality to treat illnesses, the five elements in the world restrained and also reinforced each other. Only in this way could they circulate endlessly. If the five spirits' vitality was used to treat illnesses, it should not be like this. It should be the five elements reinforcing each other. Only in this way could they circulate endlessly. Yun Qingyan, right? Meng Qi's heart suddenly moved. Above her spiritual sea, the bamboo slip that Lin Yin gave her suddenly lit up. She hurriedly sent a wisp of divine sense into it. She could only read the first 4 volumes of the bamboo slip. Now, after the 4th volume, there was new content that she had never seen before. The 5 elements repel each other. This is a sign of qi deviation. Meng Qi was stunned. She hurriedly withdrew her divine sense and looked at Yun Qingyan. Could it be that Qin Yanzhenjun was about to enter qi deviation? The huge rock suppressed the black water again. The saplings broke out of the ground, and then the flames burned. The blood in Yun Qingyan's eyes was even thicker than before. There was even a faint black aura flashing in them. The gaze in those eyes was also like knives and ice. There was no warmth in them. Meng-Chi held her breath and took a step forward. In her spiritual sea, a second line of words appeared on the bamboo slip that Lin Yin gave her. 5 Essences Meditation Mantra. Meng-Chi quickly scanned the mantra. The meditation mantra was a common mantra used to straighten out the spiritual aura of qi deviation. Previously, Qin Xiuma was stabbed in the back by a friend. He was seriously injured during the tribulation and went into qi deviation. His spiritual aura was in a mess. Meng-Chi relied on the meditation mantra to heal him. The 5 Essences meditation mantra on the bamboo slip was very similar to the meditation mantra, but more complicated and powerful. When Meng-Chi learned cultivation mantras, the attack mantras were extremely slow. However, the medical mantras were completely different. In addition, she already knew the meditation mantra. Not only did she know it, but she also practiced it to the 4th level. Later, her medical skills advanced to the 4th level, and the meditation mantra also reached the 5th level. Meng-Chi closed her eyes, and the spiritual aura in her body slowly circulated. The 5 Essences meditation mantra was based on the meditation mantra. She only tried it twice and completely mastered it. Moreover, she was surprised to find that the 5 Essences meditation mantra seemed to be the same as the meditation mantra. As soon as she learned it, it was already at the 5th level. Meng-Chi took a deep breath. She took out the last bottle of North Dark Dan from her storage bag. There were still 9 North Dark Dan inside. The 5 Essences meditation mantra consumed even more spiritual aura. Meng-Chi wasn't sure how many times she could use it. She took out another porcelain bottle. There was only 1 dark blue Dan inside. This was the Tsangming powder. It could instantly raise a Xiozhi's cultivation to the great circle of the same major realm. Even if one couldn't use their spiritual aura for 3 days after taking it, their realm could drop if they weren't careful. However, whatever. Meng-Chi finished her preparations and walked towards Yun Qingyan. She had only taken 1 step when she was forced to sway slightly by the strong wind. Qingyan's and Jun. Meng-Chi softened her voice and said seriously, "I won't harm you." She opened her eyes wide and met Yun Qingyan's blood-red and emotionless eyes. Since it was just a sign of going crazy, then it meant that she hadn't gone crazy yet. Meng-Chi had practiced medicine for many years and was clear about this kind of subtle difference. So she was certain that Yun Qingyan still had a clear mind and knew what she was saying. As expected, the strong wind that was pressing down on Meng-Chi and making it hard for her to breathe seemed to lessen. She held her breath and carefully took a step forward, walking steadily towards Yun Qingyan. Qingyan's and Jun. Meng-Chi walked step by step and finally reached the man's side. The 5-element apparitions seemed to be powerful, but in reality, they only affected Yun Qingyan. She didn't feel anything. The spiritual aura that the other person instinctively released to defend himself had a greater impact on Meng-Chi. Meng-Chi had already put away the medicine knife. She stuffed the Dan into her mouth and separated a small thread of spiritual aura to surround the Dan. This didn't use much spiritual aura and allowed her to control these North Dark Dan. She could use them one by one for her own use. As for the dark blue Tsangming Dan, Meng-Chi prepared to use it at the end. She stretched out her hands, and the fingertips of both hands flickered. The 5 Skundao meditation mantra instantly took away 1/10 of her spiritual aura. Meng-Chi smiled bitterly. At times like this, she especially hated that she wasn't strong enough. If she was already in the spirit-severing stage, or even if she was in the nascent soul stage, her chances would be much higher. Meng-Chi reached out and held Yun Qingyan's hands. The other party's slender and strong fingers were shockingly cold. As soon as she put her hand on them, a huge amount of chaotic spiritual aura rushed into her body. At times like this, Meng-Chi calmed down. She closed her eyes and ignored the powerful spiritual aura that was washing her meridians. She slowly circulated the 5 skandal meditation mantra and carefully probed Yun Qingyin's body bit by bit. At first, Meng Qi could only send a little of the 5 skandal meditation mantra into Yun Qingyin's body. Soon, it was crushed into nothingness by the spiritual aura in Yun Qingyin's body, which was much stronger than hers. The spiritual aura flowed into her body in reverse and cut through Meng Qi's meridians like knives and swords. She frowned slightly, and her body trembled slightly. The dim light on her fingertips lit up again. Meng Qi had a 5th realm cultivation technique and was already a 4th-grade medical cultivator. Even in the trichiliocosm, she could barely save a spirit-severing stage cultivator. When Yun Qinyin was intact, he was definitely not in the spirit-severing stage. However, his injuries were too serious. Even in the Starfall Sea's great desolate island, he recovered some of his strength with the help of the 5 spirits' primordial qi. However, the strength he recovered was less than 10% of his original strength. The spiritual aura he could mobilize now was only 10% to 20% of his recovered strength. Therefore, although Meng Qi was very uncomfortable, she couldn't bear it completely. She held Yun Qingyin's hands tightly and stubbornly sent the 5 skandal meditation mantra into his body again and again. The North Dark pills melted one by one and filled Meng Qi's dry, spiritual sea. Time seemed to have passed for a long time, but also seemed to have passed in an instant. Meng Qi's spiritual sea was full and empty again. The violent and chaotic spiritual aura in Yun Qingyin's body was finally no longer as chaotic as before. It was filled with indescribable aggression and hostility. Under the pacification of Meng Qi's mantras, they gradually calmed down. If Meng Qi opened her eyes to take a look at this moment, she would discover that the 5 elements around Yun Qingyin's body were no longer as terrifying as before. At least, it didn't seem as vast and terrifying as before. However, the blood-red color in the other party's eyes was still deep and thick, and it was getting redder and redder. When the 7th North Dark pill turned into spiritual aura and filled Meng Qi's spiritual sea, the back of the green-robed girl's clothes was already soaked. Fine and dense beads of sweat appeared on her forehead. Her originally fair forehead was covered in dense sweat. Even the tip of her jade-like nose was soaked with sweat. Meng Qi's originally bright red lips also became a little pale. She was originally standing in front of Yun Qinyin. At this moment, her thin body was trembling slightly, and her hair was soaked with sweat, as if she would collapse at any moment. However, Meng Qi could feel that the spiritual aura in the other party's body was becoming smoother and quieter. She heaved a sigh of relief and didn't dare to let go of her hands, afraid that if she didn't pay attention, all her previous efforts would be wasted. After all, there were hidden dangers when external forces interfered with and smoothed out the spiritual aura. If all her previous efforts were wasted, Meng Qi was worried that Yun Qinyin would directly suffer from qi deviation because of her counterattack, and it might even be worse than before. The 8th North Dark pill, then the 9th, Meng Qi could already reach the edge of Yun Qingyin's spiritual sea. Under the effect of the 5 skandal meditation mantra, even that pitch-black void didn't seem so terrifying anymore. Finally, the last bit of spiritual aura was used up. She didn't have any more North Dark pills, but she still had the Tsangming powder. The Tsangming powder could allow her to instantly become a perfected Jindan cultivator. In that case, it should be enough. When Meng Qi thought of this, she opened her eyes slightly and smiled slightly at Yun Qinyin with half-closed eyes. She knew that she definitely looked a little disheveled right now. She could even feel the coldness on her back, and her clothes were soaked with sweat. Meng Qi's heart moved slightly. The spiritual aura wrapped around the Tsangming powder was withdrawn, and the Tsangming powder dispersed. She smiled at Yun Qinyin again. Although the white-robed man's eyes were still bloodshot, they weren't as cold as before. Meng Qi closed her eyes again. At this moment, she suddenly felt a heavy weight on her shoulder, and a strong force attacked her. Meng Qi didn't have time to react at all. She felt the world spin, and with a heavy weight on her back, she was already heavily pressed to the ground. Chapter 106. Ugh! Meng-Chi's brows furrowed tightly. Her back hit the ground, and something soft gently supported her. It didn't hurt much. However, Yun Xinyan's hand that was holding her shoulder was extremely strong, as if it was going to crush her shoulder. Meng-Chi opened her eyes, and the other person's small figure was reflected in her clear black and white eyes. Unfortunately, Yun Xinyan's eyes were still blood red, and she couldn't see her own reflection. However, even if she couldn't see, Meng-Chi knew that the two of them were in a very strange position. At this moment, Yun Xinyan's other hand, which she was holding tightly in her hand, was about to pull away. Meng-Chi suddenly exerted strength in her hand and held his slender and strong hand tightly in her palm. Qin Yanzhen. She was a little anxious, and her breathing became rapid. The overbearing medicinal power of the Tsangming powder spread throughout her body, and the spiritual energy in Meng-Chi's spiritual sea surged and spread wildly in all directions. Her spiritual sea seemed to be pushed by the overflowing spiritual energy and rapidly expanded. Although they were in the same major realm, a first-stage Golden Core cultivator who had just entered the Golden Core stage couldn't be compared to a Golden Core perfected Golden Core cultivator. There was a saying in the three realms that cultivators could only be considered to have truly stepped onto the Great Tao after forming their Golden Core. The gap between foundation building and Qi cultivators wasn't large, but the gap between Golden Core and foundation building was very large. When one reached the Golden Core stage, the increase in each minor realm was almost equivalent to advancing from foundation building to Golden Core. The Tsangming powder's medicinal power was already overbearing, and the wildly surging spiritual energy seemed to have set off stormy waves in her spiritual sea. The feeling of her spiritual sea being forced open was very uncomfortable. Meng-Chi clenched her teeth tightly, and her right hand gripped Yun Xinyan's hand even more tightly, continuously sending spiritual energy into his body. She used the 5 Skundao meditation mantra to the extreme, and with the support of the sudden abundance of spiritual energy, it became slightly stronger than before. Meng-Chi even felt that she could now explore Yun Xinyan's boundless, but terrifyingly huge spiritual sea. The 5 Yun Xinyan meditation mantra was like a trickling stream. Under her efforts, it continuously calmed down Yun Xinyan's chaotic spiritual aura. Azu, or Qin Yanzhen. The slender fingers in Meng-Chi's hand struggled again. She was shocked. Yun Xinyan had her pinned to the ground, and his handsome face was only a hand's length away from hers. Meng-Chi could clearly see the desolation in his blood-red eyes that was so indifferent that it was devoid of any living being's emotions. She didn't dare to let go. If he let go now, not only would all his efforts go to waste, Yun Xinyan might really go crazy. Meng-Chi gritted his teeth and held Yun Xinyan's hand even tighter. The hand that was squeezing her shoulder tightened as well. The pain was so intense that her left shoulder started to go numb. Even her left arm didn't seem to be hers anymore. She couldn't feel her fingertips either. But his right hand, Meng-Chi used almost all her strength to hold Yun Xinyan's hand tightly. Under the influence of the Tsangming powder, the spiritual aura in her body became stronger and stronger, and her spiritual sea also became bigger. In the end, it was about 20 times bigger than before. Meng-Chi's spiritual aura was unprecedentedly abundant. She simply ignored her left shoulder and held Yun Xinyan's hand tightly. Qin Yanzhen. Meng-Chi looked into Yun Xinyan's eyes. Her eyes were clear and bright, and her expression was gentle. There was no resentment in her eyes. "I won't hurt you," she softened her voice. "Trust me." The blood-red color in the white-robed man's eyes seemed to disperse in an instant. But soon, it became even stronger than before. Just like that, he stared straight at Meng Qi with those emotionless eyes. "Qin Yanzhenjun," Meng Qi repeated softly. "I will never hurt you." She met Yun Qingyin's eyes without avoiding them. Her gaze was magnanimous, and her expression was sincere. Her right hand was still firmly holding Yun Qingyin's left hand, and the spiritual aura had never been cut off. Meng Qi's left shoulder became lighter. The hand holding her shoulder relaxed a little, and the piercing pain returned in an instant. Her entire left arm seemed to have suddenly been pierced by thousands of thin and dense needles. Meng Qi's face was slightly pale, and the blood on her lips faded. She blinked gently. Her long eyelashes trembled slightly, and more beads of sweat appeared on her forehead. "Qin Yanzhenjun." Meng Qi's voice was still soft. "I'm Meng Qi. I will never hurt you," she murmured and repeated in a gentle tone, like a mother singing a bedtime song to her child, with an indescribable sense of comfort. Yun Qinyin gently raised her slender fingers. Her slightly cold fingertips gently touched Meng Qi's pale little face. Then, she gently brushed her long eyelashes. Finally, it landed on her pale and slightly dry lips. Meng Qi was stunned. Yun Qingyin's fingers had already gently swept across her soft lips, and there seemed to be a trace of warmth on her fingertips. The blood in his eyes was still very thick, so Meng Qi couldn't see through his thoughts at all. However, his left hand, which was held by her, stopped struggling and no longer tried to pull away. Soon, even his right hand moved away from Meng Qi's lips, and he seemed to be slowly able to control his divine sense. Meng Qi breathed a sigh of relief, even though the two of them were still in a very strange position. But forget it. As long as Yun Qinyin was fine, it was fine. If he really suddenly wanted to hurt her, Meng Qi would definitely not be a match for Yun Qinyin, even if she had the help of the Songming powder and temporarily raised her cultivation level to the peak of the Golden Core realm. Meng Qi slowly exhaled. She closed her eyes again and began to concentrate on continuing to use the 5 Skanda Meditation Sutra to tidy up the spiritual aura in Yun Qingyin's body. However, in the next moment, Meng Qi felt a slight pain in her chin, and someone had already pinched it. She quickly opened her eyes and could only see Yun Qingyin's suddenly magnified face in front of her. Even at such a close distance, it was still a flawless face. Before she could react, she felt a warmth on her lips, and Yun Qingyin's lips had already covered hers. Meng Qi. Meng Qi. Her breathing became erratic. Meng Qi didn't know how she came back to her senses. Or perhaps her divine sense had been completely withdrawn from her body and had been floating very high in the clouds. It made her float up and down, as if she was dreaming. Her mind was completely blank. Meng Qi was completely relying on her instincts to continue holding Yun Qingyin's hand and not let go. She had already used the 5 Skanda Meditation Sutra more than 100 times today. She was so familiar with it that she didn't need to control it at all. It could repeat itself and continuously enter Yun Qingyin's body. She couldn't. The only thought Meng Qi still had was that she couldn't let go of Yun Qingyin's hand. She even used more strength and held Yun Qingyin's left hand even tighter. Her ears were wet, and her mind was in a mess from the sound of breathing. Meng Qi thought she seemed to hear Yun Qinyin chuckle softly, but she could no longer think. She felt like she was a dream boat in the Starfall Sea, tossed high by the waves and then falling heavily back down. She could only rise and fall with the sea. Meng Qi didn't know how much time had passed. In her dizziness, the medicinal effect of the Songming powder gradually disappeared. Her forcefully expanded spiritual sea gradually dried up, revealing thin cracks. Within 3 days, she couldn't use her spiritual aura anymore, and the small cracks in her spiritual sea would slowly repair themselves. If she forcefully used her spiritual aura in these few days, or even used the Songming powder again, her spiritual sea would be severely damaged. If that happened, his spirit sea would be severely damaged and might even completely collapse. If it was light, her realm would drop. If it was serious, she wouldn't be able to advance an inch for the rest of her life, and she might even lose her life. The last strand of the 5 Skanda Meditation Sutra entered Yun Qingyin's body from the fingertips of Meng Qi's right hand, which had never let go. She frowned. Her spiritual sea had dried up, and the side effects of the overbearing medicinal effect of its Songming powder made her very uncomfortable. Her body was sore and painful, and she was about to be exhausted. Meng Qi forced herself to open her eyes and look at Yun Qingyan. The man's face, which had always been calm and indifferent, was dyed with an expression she had never seen before. A few strands of sweat-soaked hair were stuck to his face. Not only did this not make Yun Qingyan ugly, but it also added some charm to him that she had never seen before. The blood in Yun Qingyan's eyes had faded, and the stars seemed to be reflected in his deep eyes that had become clear again. He seemed to be in disbelief as he looked at Meng Qi, who was still firmly suppressed by him. There were several red marks of different depths on the girl's smooth and slender neck. Not to mention further down Meng Qi. Yun Qingyan's voice was slightly hoarse as he called out to her softly. Ugh! Meng Qi snorted softly. His head tilted, and he completely fainted. Yun Qingyan. He was stunned for a moment. Looking at the pale face of the girl in his arms, he reached out to touch her wrist in bewilderment. Fortunately, Yun Qingyan heaved a sigh of relief. It was just that he had fainted from exhaustion. That Songming powder was overbearing, and Meng Qi had repeatedly overdrawn his spiritual aura. In the end, he even took the Songming powder, and Yun Qingyan's eyes flashed slightly as he looked at the marks he had left on Meng Qi's body. He closed his eyes and flicked his finger. A clear light enveloped the two of them. In the blink of an eye, their bodies became fresh and clean again. A soft and clean white robe wrapped around Meng Qi's thin body. Yun Qingyan stood up with her in his arms. The expression on his face was unpredictable, and the chaotic spiritual aura in his body had calmed down again. Even the originally empty spirit ocean had a small vortex of spiritual aura. It was slowly rotating, as if it could grow and multiply endlessly and become stronger and stronger. Yun Qingyan's gaze swept across the room. The originally elegant room seemed to have experienced a terrible catastrophe. Everything had turned into ashes, and it was empty as if it had never existed. He lowered his head and looked at the unconscious girl in his arms. Meng Qi's soft cherry lips were slightly red and swollen, which made her small face look even paler. Yun Qingyan. His expression became more and more complicated. Now that he was completely awake and had regained his consciousness, he knew clearly what had just happened. Yun Qingyan's gaze followed Meng Qi's elegant little face, her delicate and small chin, then her fair and slender neck, her narrow shoulders, and her thin arms. Then it was her slender fingers that were like spring onions. Meng Qi clearly didn't look that strong, but Yun Qingyan remembered it clearly. Just now, from the beginning to the end, even when he treated her like that, Meng Qi had never let go of his hand. He exhaled heavily, exhaling the turbid air in his chest. Why? Why did she do this? Yun Qingyan had seen Meng Qi's stubbornness and tenacity. He knew that she was a girl who would stick to her heart and fight to the end once she made up her mind. But why? Did she have to sacrifice herself to save him? Yun Qingyan was silent. He carried Meng Qi and left his empty room. He had just stepped out of the room. The door of the room, diagonally opposite Meng Qi's room, was open from the inside with a creak. Yi Wu, who had slightly recovered, stood at the door. She didn't seem to expect that the first person she saw when she woke up was not Meng Qi, but a handsome man she had never seen before. Yun Qingyan stopped and looked at Yi Wu from the corner of her eyes. The demon realm warlord, who had always been decisive and sharp, was only stunned for a moment before he quickly came back to his senses. Yi Wu's gaze quickly swept over Meng Qi, who was in the other party's arms, and then looked up at Yun Qingyan. Her spiritual sea was shattered, and her storage bag had been lost when she fell into the Starfall Sea. She didn't have any weapons, and she couldn't use any spells. Yi Wu instantly became alert and looked at Yun Qingyan warily. If she wasn't mistaken, Meng Qi had fainted. He was clearly energetic just now, but now his face was pale and he was in someone's arms. "Who are you?" Although it was obvious that Yun Qingyan wasn't someone she could afford to offend, Yi Wu still asked, "What happened to Meng Qi?" Yun Qingyan glanced at her coldly. He carried Meng Qi and didn't stop walking, delicately walking into the depths of the manor. "Stop!" Yi Wu bowed slightly, like a cheetah ready to pounce. His gaze was cold and sharp as he looked at the white-robed man with a cold expression. "What happened to Meng Qi?" "Go back." Yun Qingyan flicked his sleeves. He didn't stop walking, but a gust of wind rushed towards Yi Wu. A strong gust of wind swept up the tall Devil World battleship and threw her back into her room, closing the door behind her. "You!" Yi Wu jumped up and rushed towards the door again. Although the gust of wind was strong, Yun Qingyan had obviously shown mercy, so she wasn't injured. She hurriedly opened the door again, but it was quiet outside. Even the white-robed man's tall figure had disappeared. Yi Wu wanted to step out of the door, but as soon as she stepped out of the door, a resistance threw her back into the room. She jumped up again. Although she wasn't injured, her spiritual sea was indeed damaged, and she was no different from an ordinary person. The white-robed man flicked his sleeves. He was so powerful. Yi Wu felt a chill run down her back. Meng Qi was unconscious and fell into the hands of such a strong person. Then she looked worriedly outside the door, countless thoughts flashing through her mind. This was obviously a manor. Yi Wu quickly judged. It was the morning of the second day after Meng Qi brought her back. The sun had already risen, but the stars in the sky were still bright. Even the sunlight couldn't take away the brightness of the stars. This place should still be in the Starfall Sea. To be able to own such a manor in the Starfall Sea, Yi Wu sucked in a breath of cold air. What was the background of this handsome and otherworldly white-robed man? As far as she knew, even the masters of the 5 great demon residences in the demon realm couldn't do it. Yi Wu stood worriedly at the door. Was it because Meng Qi had saved her and angered the master of this place? Was that why he was treated like that? Yi Wu's jaw tightened. If that was the case, then she would try to save Meng Qi even if she had to risk her life. Meng Qi didn't know how long she had slept. In a daze, she could feel her empty spiritual sea. There wasn't a single drop of spiritual aura left, and there were many small cracks in her spiritual sea. The inner core was still dutifully rotating slowly. Wisps of spiritual aura slowly fell from it and fell into the spiritual sea. But in an instant, the spiritual aura flowed away from those cracks. Her spiritual sea was still empty. Next to the inner core, the embryonic form of the 5-spirit cauldron was no different from before. Without spiritual aura in the spiritual sea, there was no way to continue refining the natal magic treasure. The light of the small cauldron that was already in the shape of a small cauldron had become a little dim. If it weren't for another bamboo slip wrapped in a soft white light of spiritual aura, there would be wisps of spiritual aura wrapped around the small cauldron, preventing it from completely disappearing. Perhaps when Meng Qi was unconscious, the embryonic form of the 5-spirit cauldron had completely dissipated. Ugh, she snorted softly. Not only was her spiritual sea dry, but her body was also sore and painful. She felt as if she had fallen from a high place and fallen straight to the ground. Even her limbs were sore and her head was dizzy, as if it was filled with something. She didn't even have the strength to open her eyes. But she couldn't go on like this. Meng Qi struggled hard, trying to wake herself up quickly. She vaguely remembered that she still had something to do and had to wake up as soon as possible. There was still someone waiting. Yes, there was still someone waiting for her. But what was it? In a daze, Meng Qi raised her right hand slightly, her fingers trembling a few times. "Don't move." A deep and pleasant male voice sounded in her ears. Not only was the voice very pleasant, it also sounded very familiar, making her feel that she should listen to the other party. Meng Qi had just raised her hand, but she obediently put it down again. Someone pulled the blanket up until it reached her delicate chin. "Thank you." Meng-Chi couldn't even open her eyes, but she still murmured her thanks. Her divine sense was still a little clear, but she had overdrawn her spiritual aura. Coupled with the overbearing effects of its Songming powder, she was so weak that she even found it difficult to open her eyes. But she vaguely knew that someone was right beside her. This person was someone she could trust wholeheartedly. With him around, she didn't need to hurry to wake up. In a daze, Meng-Chi fell asleep again. She didn't know how long she slept. When she woke up again, she felt weak all over, but the soreness was slightly better. Although her spiritual sea was still as dry as before, the cracks in her spiritual sea seemed to be fewer than before. In the air above her spiritual sea, there were still strands of spiritual aura coming out of the bamboo slips, wrapping around the five-spirit cauldron. The inner core was floating on the side, looking brighter than before. Meng-Chi still felt very tired, but slightly better than before. Although her eyelids were still very heavy, it wasn't like before, when just opening them required all her strength. Her long eyelashes fluttered twice, and she slowly opened her eyes. Meng-Chi's vision was a little dim, but it wasn't pitch black. The faint light was very gentle, and didn't make her feel uncomfortable at all. She finally opened her eyes completely, and what entered her sight was a soft veil hanging down from the roof. Meng-Chi slowly blinked her eyes. Her body was still very weak, but her mind was slowly becoming clear. Where was this? Meng-Chi moved her body slightly, and the soft and light silk blanket covered her chin. She was also wearing clean and fresh clothes. Apart from the soreness that had yet to fade, she didn't feel any discomfort. She took a deep breath, supported herself with one hand on the bed, and tried to sit up. As soon as Meng-Chi moved, a hand reached out and pulled the thin blanket over her, supporting her back through the blanket and helping her sit up. She turned her head to look beside her. Yun Qingyan was sitting on the recliner by the bed. Under the soft light of the night pearl, Meng-Chi could even see his every move clearly. The white-robed man had one leg stretched out, and the other was casually stepping on the recliner. He was leaning slightly and gently supporting her. "Qingyan's and Jun." Meng-Chi's eyes suddenly lit up. "Are you okay, Yun Qingyan?" He looked at Meng-Chi with a complicated expression. The joy on the girl's face was sincere, and even her sparkling eyes were clear and clean. Meng-Chi subconsciously reached out her right hand to Yun Qingyan's wrist, and a faint light lit up on her fingertips. "Ugh," she groaned. She felt that she had slept for a long time, but in fact, it had only been a day and a night. The overbearing effects of the Songming powder had yet to fade. She used her spiritual aura, and her spiritual sea shook, making her dizzy. Yun Qingyan grabbed Meng-Chi's hand. When she came back to her senses, she felt a huge amount of pure spiritual aura slowly flowing into her body. Her spiritual sea felt like it had been sprinkled by rain, and she instantly felt like she was bathing in a spring breeze. However, the spiritual aura was quickly withdrawn. Yun Qingyan said, "Your spiritual sea hasn't recovered yet. It can't take it." "Okay." Meng-Chi nodded obediently. Yun Qingyan was much stronger than her. He wasn't a medical cultivator, so he didn't know any medical cultivation techniques. It was okay for him to help her stabilize her shaking spiritual sea. If he really sent a large amount of spiritual aura into Meng-Chi's body to help her repair her spiritual sea, her spiritual sea might have exploded, and she might have died. "Qingyan's and Jun." Meng-Chi looked up at him again. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." Yun Qingyan's expression was complicated. "That's good." Meng-Chi breathed a sigh of relief. Although she couldn't use her spiritual aura, her divine sense had completely recovered. After receiving Yun Qingyan's confirmation, she simply closed her eyes and used her divine sense to explore her body. "Thank goodness." Meng-Chi breathed a sigh of relief. Her inner core wasn't damaged. In the air above her spiritual sea, wisps of spiritual aura were still seeping out of her inner core. Next to her inner core, Even the embryonic form of the five-spirit cauldron was still there. Wisps of white light came out of the bamboo slip that Lin Yin gave her, completely enveloping the five-spirit cauldron. Meng Qi breathed a big sigh of relief again. She took a risk at that time. Fortunately, Senior Lin Yin was there. Otherwise, her five-spirit cauldron might have been a failure. Without the bamboo slip that recorded the refining method of the five-spirit cauldron, even if she found all the precious materials, she wouldn't be able to refine this natal magic weapon. Meng Qi breathed a big sigh of relief again. In addition, she was surprised to find that her meditation technique and the five essence meditation technique had reached the peak of the fifth realm. She was only one step away from reaching the sixth realm. Sixth level incantation, even if it was just the most basic meditation incantation, was no small matter. Also, her medical skills had improved slightly from the first realm of the fourth realm to the second realm. Oh, not bad. Meng Qi was instantly filled with joy. The embryonic form of the five-spirit cauldron that she was most worried about was still there, and she had additional gains. Now, she just couldn't use her spiritual aura for 3 days. This was really nothing. Meng Qi opened her eyes and met Yun Qingyin's eyes. She couldn't help but smile sweetly. Qingyan Zhenjun, my medical skills have reached the second realm of the fourth realm. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.